Hitler had the supreme fascist state. And what was he worried about in Europe and in Germany? He was worried about white genetic annihilation.
For the first time, the Netherlands has published online the names of roughly 500,000 suspected Nazi collaborators, almost 80 years after the end of World War II. As NPR's Rachel Treisman reports, the move grants access to descendants and researchers worldwide as the country continues to grapple with its role in the Holocaust.
For nearly a century, the Netherlands' largest World War II archive could only be viewed in person by certain historians. The Central Archives of the Special Jurisdiction includes 30 million documents about Holocaust victims, resistance activities, and alleged Nazi collaborators. And part of it went live last week after a law restricting public access expired on January 1st.
The fact that people can access them without having to travel all over the world is just remarkable.
That's Amy Simon, a professor of history and Jewish studies at Michigan State University.
It's a very exciting moment for new historical discoveries.
Dutch humanities groups hope to have the entire archive digitized by 2027. For now, they've posted the names of the roughly 425,000 Dutch people suspected of collaborating with the Nazis. They were accused of trading information, harboring soldiers, and more during Nazi Germany's 5-year occupation.
Collaboration, in its most expansive definition, is about participating in some way in the destruction of European Jewry.
75% of the Netherlands' Jewish population was killed in the Holocaust, the highest percentage in Western Europe. Simon says people collaborated for a variety of reasons, from self-protection to anti-Semitism.
The story of Dutch collaboration is not unknown. The most famous example, of course, is the Anne Frank family being betrayed.
But the archives could help paint an even fuller picture. Only a fraction of suspected collaborators ever appeared in court, and most have since died. Simon says the publication of their names isn't likely to have legal ramifications, but it could have personal consequences.
I can't imagine if it's my grandparent and all of a sudden a book comes out about how they were a collaborator based on these documents.
Simon hopes the distance from the Holocaust will make some of those conversations easier. It also makes them more important. Only about 245,000 Holocaust survivors were still alive as of last January. And a 2023 survey found that nearly a quarter of Dutch millennials and Gen Z think the Holocaust is a myth, or that the number of Jews killed was greatly exaggerated. Simon says Holocaust education isn't only a matter of preserving history.
As we're trying to make sense of our world today, in terms of Israel, Gaza, and anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, we have to look to the past to understand how we got here and what it all means.
The Netherlands has been reflecting on its past in other ways, too. It opened its first National Holocaust Museum last year. Rachel Treisman, NPR News.
The Las Vegas shooting, I've kind of heard of it, but it's, I guess, well, not weird, but, you know, I watched too much YouTube. And I did see stories about New Orleans, but I didn't see anything about that man come up, the Vegas person. I didn't see him at all. Nothing. I think I kind of saw it, maybe a commentator on the side, but I didn't hear anything about the Vegas person. And concerning that one looks darker than the other, I guess I'm not surprised.
There are new details tonight about the man believed responsible for exploding a Tesla cybertruck last week in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Police and military officials now believe Matt Leibelsberger suffered post-traumatic stress disorder, and we now have some of the final words that he wrote that might help explain the end of the life of a decorated Special Forces soldier. Here's Nick Schifrin.
Matthew Leibelsberger was a warrior, a career Special Forces soldier known as a Green Beret. In 13 years, he deployed 9 times, including 5 times to Afghanistan, and rose to become an intelligence, then team sergeant with the rank of master sergeant. But his final days were spent on leave, stopping at Tesla charging stations on a circuitous route from Colorado to Las Vegas. where he died by suicide before exploding his rented Tesla Cybertruck in front of Trump Tower. In notes on his phone released by Las Vegas police, he called out, quote, military and vets, be prepared to fight to get the Dems out of the Fed government. But he also wrote, why did I personally do it now? I needed to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took. U.S. officials confirm Livelsberger, like so many other warriors, suffered trauma from service, including a reported traumatic brain injury. He also suffered moral injury.
You want to read the email?
Yep. That he detailed to Army Intelligence Officer Sam Shoemate, who read a Livelsberger email on the Sean Ryan podcast. In the email, Livelsberger admitted he participated in a 2019 strike in Afghanistan that he said killed hundreds of civilians and a subsequent cover-up. Livelsberger was also in touch with an ex after splitting up from his second wife.
It ultimately appears to be a tragic case of suicide involving a heavily decorated combat veteran who is struggling with PTSD and other issues.
Army officials confirm he was in therapy. Quote, Livelsberger had access to and used the Preservation of the Force and Family program. He did not display any concerning behaviors at the time and was granted personal leave. That was just days before his life ended in Las Vegas. For additional perspective, we turn to retired Army Brigadier General Stephen Xenakis, a psychiatrist with extensive experience working with veterans with PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. Stephen Xenakis, thanks very much. Welcome back to the NewsHour. When you look at Master Sergeant Livelsberger's deployments, when you read what he wrote in that suicide note released by the police and that email to Sam Shoemate, what do you see?
Well, it's tragic. And unfortunately, it's a story that we have heard at other times. It's a story that comes out of all these 20 years of warfare and goes back actually many, many years, thousands of years. These men and soldiers, these men and women that go through these multiple deployments under these circumstances are really events, and the stress and the trauma and pile up on them. And you have all these factors in play with him. You have his sense of moral injury, which is a guilt and shame that comes with what soldiers do and haven't done, knowing that there's a core ethical principle that they live by. It's very individual, but that is a common principle that we have that is very important in terms of justifying or being able to make sense out of the actions that have to be undertaken in war. You have the stress that comes out as post-traumatic stress. There is traumatic brain injury, which there's evidence that he also suffered that there's injury and damage to the brain. Very often, these soldiers also have other injuries and musculoskeletal pain. They have problems with sleep. We don't know in this particular circumstance if there was self-medication, sometimes prescribed medications. All of this piles up, and over time, it just gets to be too much. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Sorry to interrupt you, but can PTSD, can the reported traumatic brain injury that his ex-girlfriend reportedly say, can that really drive someone like him to do what he did?
Well, what happens is it piles up, and there's a period where the soldier copes as best as the soldiers cope as best as they can, and they're able to go through their daily life, have relationships, and then at some point it gets to be too much. Maybe it's part as they get older, as they get more responsibilities, as they're thinking back and haunted by the memories, and it's almost like they fall off a cliff. And it can be very precipitous, and they get into a very dark place in their life. So it's the piling on, it's the cumulative effect of all these different circumstances that they're living with.
And how does that, sorry, forgive me again, and how does that interact with his apparent family issues? He reportedly split from his second wife just days or weeks before January 1st, with whom they had a very young child.
Well, there's a lot of stress, right? And they're having problems in day-to-day coping, and that can particularly play out in intimate relationships and family relationships. And then that feedback loop of, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. I don't have people that are supporting me. I don't have people that are caring, understand what's going on. And things just, their lives just get worse, and their struggle gets even harder. So there's no one factor here. It's the connection of all these factors. It's the whole is much more than the sum of the parts. And what's important in terms of being able to care for these men and women, for our soldiers, for our veterans, is really experiencing them and engaging them as the whole person that they are, and realizing that each of these problems that they're facing will, over time, cause them to feel worse and maybe get to a desperate situation, as this man got to.
You talk about experiencing with them, engaging with them. In the minute or so that we have left, is the U.S. military doing enough, in your opinion, to provide mental health services to service members?
Well, look, they're trying as hard as they can. Look, these are tough problems. And even with experienced clinicians, there are people that, for whatever reason, don't seem to be able to get better. Is there more to do? Well, that's an obligation we have as military physicians, as leaders, to keep thinking about what more can we do? What are we going to learn from this incident? What are we going to learn from all the others? And what can we do to improve our support? Warfare is tough, and people bear the burden and struggle with it. So the military is doing what it can. We do that as part of that, but we've got to continue to put more energy and time to improve our support for our service members and their families.
Psychiatrist and retired Army Brigadier General Steve Xenakis, thank you very much.
I'm glad to help. Thanks.
The war's on. That's why we formed the militia.
Congress has certified Donald Trump as the winner of the 2024 presidential election. On Monday, Vice President Kamala Harris oversaw the process of certifying her own defeat.
Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025.
Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson grinned as he sat behind Kamala Harris. The certification took place on January 6th, formerly a day of unremarkable procedure, and 4 years to the day after a violent mob of Trump supporters smashed their way into the Capitol, demanding then Vice President Mike Pence refuse to certify Joe Biden's win. This comes as people who went to jail for their role in January 6th are asking President-elect Trump for a full and complete presidential pardon, including far-right Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, who was convicted of seditious conspiracy. For more, we're joined by Joshua Kaplan, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for ProPublica, who covered the January 6, 2020 riot at the U.S. Capitol, has published a major new expose headlined "The Militia and the Mole." His related piece in August is headlined "Armed and Underground: Inside the Turbulent Secret World of an American Militia." His new piece is based on material provided by a wilderness survival trainer named John Williams, who was upset by January 6 and decided to go undercover in this same militia movement. He gathered 2 years of material, brought it to Kaplan to report on it. On Monday, Williams released another giant trove of materials on a website called Distributed Denial of Secrets. For more, we're joined by Josh Kaplan in our New York studio. Welcome back to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. Talk about the significance of yesterday, where you were as you covered January 6th, and then who exactly John Williams is and the significance of his revelations to you, Josh.
Absolutely. So, I mean, after January 6th, which I think it's easy to forget at this point, was an incredibly violent day. I've stood on the porches of Capitol Police members who adore Trump, but were just shaken by the beatings they saw that day, the attacks they saw on their colleagues. And after January 6th, history would have suggested, and a lot of militia leaders even thought, that the movement may not survive, that the backlash would be so intense that the militias would go extinct for an extended period of time. And they started to resurge in the years since and expand at a dramatic pace because, in large part, this is in some because of the policies of social media companies, but it's also because Trump and other prominent Republicans have embraced the January 6 rioters as patriots and political prisoners. And that's given the kind of license for these, for people to join these groups again and to expand rapidly. And one thing that's changed since January 6 is that militias have become much more careful at keeping their activities underground. And these files that Williams provided give this incredibly candid, detailed window inside this underground. And they reveal how these groups have united convicted criminals with doctors, government attorneys, active duty police officers and U.S. soldiers.
And we know there were a number of active duty police officers and veterans and soldiers at January 6th in the insurrection.
Absolutely. No, it was they were disproportionately represented in that and in militias.
And at the same time, you have 140 Capitol and Metropolitan Police who were injured in this attack.
Absolutely. Yes, and then also one thing that came out in these files is the dangerous vigilante operations these militias have still been doing that they had managed to keep a secret. And that ranges from armed patrols at the border rounding up migrants to trying to crack down on voters casting absentee ballots, surveillance of local journalists and activists, assaulting Black Lives Matter protesters, and then also, lastly, in these files, there's this constant drumbeat of incredibly heated debate over whether they should escalate things even further and commit acts of mass political violence.
So you write, the documents laid out a remarkable odyssey. Posing as an ideological compatriot, John Williams had penetrated the top ranks of two of the most prominent right-wing militias in the country. So tell us who John Williams is. Talk about how you came in contact with him, why he gave you so much information over the years, and now has himself released a trove of information just yesterday. And who the groups are he was working with, from AP3 to a number of these groups.
Absolutely. So John Williams, he's a loner. He's extremely intelligent, well-read, introspective. He's also extraordinarily intense about almost every aspect of his life. And he had a tumultuous upbringing in young adulthood. He was convicted of a series of crimes that led to him spending 3 years in prison.
He lived where?
He lived in Utah. That's where he infiltrated these groups. And he, after he got out of prison, became a wilderness survival instructor. And that is how he says he first came in contact with these groups. They had hired him for training. He tried to move on. And after January 6th, he was outraged and ashamed that he'd helped them in some small way. And he thought that, as he tells it, that the countless people would respond to this attack with aggressive action. And so he decided to reach back out and try to do a undercover operation of his own devising, as kind of a freelance vigilante.
As a freelance vigilante and kind of journalist.
Yes, no, absolutely. And he didn't have a plan at first, but he is, I mean, another thing to know about John is that he's a extraordinarily talented liar, and that was the key to why he was so effective here. But but I was able to authenticate these files he had very carefully. Now, he reached out
to a number of journalists, but you responded.
Yes, and so my relationship started with him towards the end of his journey in these groups, and I received this mysterious anonymous email that he'd sent to an array of reporters, and he didn't in this email say, I'm an infiltrator who's gotten inside these groups. It was much more vague, but there's something intriguing about it. I responded, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting much at first. I was skeptical, but we spoke a handful of times over encrypted calls, and then he sent me these files.
So talk about AP3, talk about the Proud Boys, talk about his rise in the militia movement in Utah, even as he is exposing it.
Yes, so so AP3, it's American Patriots 3%. This is I think people might be familiar with the 3%ers, and really the largest or 3%er group in the country for a long time has been AP3, and it's one of the largest militias in the U.S.
And explain why it's 3%. What does that stand for?
That's this based on the claim that only 3% of Americans fought in the American Revolution, and so it's this idea that a very small group of dedicated people can stand up to tyranny, which is what they see in kind of liberal governance, and he was able to, John was so successful at this that he ultimately got the head of the group's, of AP3's Utah chapter, fired, and then convinced people to put John in his place. So he was leading that group. He was sleeping in the home of the new leader of the Oath Keepers after the previous leader, the founder, went to prison was sentenced for seditious conspiracy for conspiring to violently overthrow the government on January 6th. And he was going through this guy's files another night. I mean, it's amazing. I listened to these tapes, and I spent an enormous amount of time authenticating them. And he sounded like a completely different person on the call, just a brand new personality from the John I was speaking to on the phone. And these militia guys loved him, and it enabled him to lie and manipulate his way into the heart of several of these groups.
So talk about how the groups interact, and also he was almost exposed when he actually reached out to warn a journalist that they were a target.
Yes, so there's a lot of interplay among these groups. I mean, I think that I think a lot of lay people think of them like gangs, like you're a Proud Boy, so you're forever a Proud Boy. They're much more porous than that. People kind of cycle, but members will cycle between them, one group, and the missions of each are kind of ill-defined. It's part of why they've been able to grow so much. There's shared grievances, but when it comes to questions of, are we trying to overthrow the government, or are we trying to just police the border in our own dangerous vigilante operations, or are we trying to get involved in local politics? Those aren't questions that have predefined answers, and so there's constant debate about them, and it enables them to, in some ways, especially at the local level, bridge more mainstream conservative politics and more violent action. But the through line in all of these is paramilitary training, intense firearms training, where they will do things like practice storming buildings with semi-automatic rifles or doing an ambush with explosives.
What did he learn about the Salt Lake Tribune reporter?
Yes, so the reporter, so he was on a call at one point, and there was a conversation about, some woman started speaking about how there was a journalist in her small town who was covering the town's vice mayor, who was under fire for a homophobic remark. And she thought this journalist was leading a secret far-left plot, and also was her neighbor, and she thought he'd been trying to harass her by leaving dead animals in her lawn. And so she seemed in the grip of something. And then at the end of this call, she said, I think I need to settle a score with this guy.
They're still neighbors.
They're still neighbors. It's getting to the deep state local level. It's got to be stopped. And this scared John. He felt obligated to warn this journalist, and so he sent him an anonymous email. The next morning, he saw an article posted online. The journalist had written 500 words about this experience and the strange email he'd gotten, and had a screenshot of the note. And there'd been some lines pointing. There's a lot of evidence pointing that John was the guy who leaked this, and so he thought, I'm finally found out. People are going to know I'm the mole. I'm going to go on the run. And so he picks up his life and flees to the desert, so he can disappear for at least several weeks.
So right now, we've just passed January 6th. President-elect Trump has called it a day of love. Enrique Tarrio, on January 6th, who was convicted and imprisoned for seditious conspiracy, head of the Proud Boys, has asked for a pardon. He actually wasn't there on January 6th. He was, picked up before January 6th? But explain the significance of that and where the Proud Boys fit into this story. And then the larger question, the visuals outside the jail where January 6th insurrectionists are held. There is a demand for a sort of global pardon of the protesters. President Trump, when asked by journalists whether he's going to pardon them, he said, not in the first 90 days, 30 days, like on the first day, in the first minutes. Not clear if it's going to be a blanket pardon or if he's at other times said he's going to look at each and every case.
Yeah, so the Proud Boys, to answer your first question, they're another militia group that is very much kind of sees itself as an arm of Trump, as a kind of the Trump street fighters, essentially. And their trademark until January 6th was fighting with activists in the street and kind of attacking people at left-wing protests. And they, according to the Department of Justice, were really, as much as any group, what led the charge that enabled the Capitol riot to happen, enabled the Capitol to be stormed. And so these pardons, the ramifications could be massive. They have the potential to trigger a renaissance for militant extremists, because there's no precedent for this kind of message of protection and support coming from the White House. And so if these pardons are as sweeping as Trump has repeatedly suggested they might be, if they include those who assaulted police officers that day, how that will be interpreted is that you can commit even serious crimes and not be punished for that, as long as you're doing it for the quote-unquote right cause.
Mm-hmm. And finally, going back to that affiliation with law enforcement, John Williams talking about how others in AP3 and other groups kept telling him, you can contact your local sheriff.
Yeah, these groups view that as critical to their success, having allies in law enforcement. The signature of these groups is putting themselves in incredibly volatile situations with a lot of guns. And so they want to have police, if not actively help them, at least leave them alone, see them as a friend.
They have a spreadsheet of the sheriffs that are friendly to them.
They have a spreadsheet. Every member in AP3 got a spreadsheet of the sheriffs in their state, was told to reach out to them, mark who's friendly, who's not. And they have these very detailed and kind of business school-esque tactics for buttering up police officers, buttering up sheriffs, trying to kind of pitch themselves. It's an incredibly organized effort that we don't, and in some cases has been quite successful, it seems. And we don't really normally get a view of that playbook, of those tactics, and how the sheer amount of work that they put into this.
And finally, as we look at what happened in Las Vegas with the Green Beret active duty who shot himself and his Tesla, you could call it a tank, exploded in front of the Trump Hotel, as well as the Army veteran in New Orleans. These what look like lone wolf military guys, heavily armed. Did you see, as you were exploring this terrain with John Williams, people like that?
Yes. I mean, this is certainly, and it's not, you know, I don't want to get into specific incidents that we haven't reported, but I mean, there have been high-profile, nothing like the Las Vegas attack, but high-profile incidents in the 2022 midterms, for instance, of a man doing an armed stakeout of a ballot box, and getting in a confrontation with a woman sparked a national news cycle. He was an AP3 leader doing an AP3 operation, and he was not linked back to the group or to any kind of organized effort until John came along. And so certainly these people right now may well be lone wolves. I have no reason to suggest otherwise. And there's, you know, people can be radicalized online right now. But there's also this long history of, and it's, I think, become an even more concerted effort potentially in recent years, of people committing acts of violence who look like lone wolves, take care to look like lone wolves, and then it comes out very long after the fact that they actually were working with or had a very long history with organized militia groups.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us and for doing this deep investigation. Joshua Kaplan, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for ProPublica.
If you're going to dominate people over a long period of time and do it in a scientific manner, one of the easiest ways to do it, if not the easiest way, is to keep the people confused. So you keep confusion going. Dislocation is one of the major ones now. Keep people moving, because they have found out over a period of time that people who are constantly forced to move from one place to another, either the water is rising and they have to move, or in some cases the water is not rising, but the prices are rising in the area where they are, and they can no longer stay there because they can't afford to be where they are. So they raise the prices on everything.
A lawsuit from the Department of Justice meant to end a practice of putting profits over people.
So it's suing 6 of the nation's largest landlords for price fixing here. Something to talk about. So Good Day's Caitlin Pratt is here to break down what this could mean for us. Caitlin?
And a lot of people very interested.
Oh, yeah.
So many renters interested in this. We first told you about this alleged pricing scheme back in August. And now the U.S. Department of Justice is expanding an antitrust lawsuit, adding 6 different landlord companies with national real estate holdings. Now, Cortland Management, LLC, headquartered right here in Atlanta, one of those companies. The suit says that landlords and property management software system RealPage used algorithms to raise rent prices. Cortland oversees 80,000 apartments in 13 different states. The suit also accuses real estate companies of collusion, communicating with competitors to share sensitive information. Property managers, says the suit, participating in call-arounds where they exchange details about rent, discounts, pricing tactics, including more than 30 properties across the metro area here in Georgia. This practice, says the DOJ, let landlords align their prices and avoid competition that would have kept prices down for renters.
Landlords understand what their arrangement with RealPage gets them. As one said, quote, "I always liked this product because your algorithm uses proprietary data from other subscribers to suggest rents and terms. That's classic price fixing."
And Atlanta-based Cortland management did agree to cooperate with the investigation, telling Fox 5 in part, quote, Cortland has invested years and significant internal resources into developing a proprietary revenue management software tool that does not rely on data from external, non-public sources. The terms of Cortland's settlement have been agreed to with the Department of Justice, will be filed with the court for its approval. The other management companies in the lawsuit are Greystar Real Estate Partners, Blackstone's LiveCore, Camden Property Trust, Cushman and Wakefield, and Willow Bridge Property Company. RealPage, for its part, called claims against the company false and misleading. And other cities have passed laws banning the use of rent-setting algorithms. So here in Georgia, there is a possibility this could lead to some legislative action, which with so many renters here, just even in Atlanta, I'm sure would be welcomed.
New apartments going up every day.
Oh, 100%.
Sounds like something we should talk to John Adams about as well.
Yes.
I'd love to hear his take about this.
For sure.
All right, Caitlin, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, first ladies usually have a cause, and you've already said you're interested in speaking out against bullying on social media.
I think it's very important because a lot of children and teenagers are getting hurt, and we need to teach them how to talk to each other, how to treat each other, and to be able to connect with each other on the right way.
It's an ironic choice, since her own husband sent out a stream of pretty nasty tweets during the campaign.
Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, is getting rid of fact checks. The fact check program was created to help limit the spread of falsehoods on its platforms, but it's become a target of conservative claims of censorship. In a video announcing the changes, CEO Mark Zuckerberg echoed those claims.
We've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship.
NPR's Shannon Bond joins us now to talk this through. Hey, Shannon.
Hey, Mary Louise.
Okay, how did Meta explain this decision today?
Yeah, I mean, this fact-checking program had been in place since 2017, and it was originally a response to the 2016 election when Russia used Facebook and other platforms to spread false claims to try to influence American voters. And this was really an approach that Mark Zuckerberg had championed. You know, Meta set an industry standard in the way for dealing with false and misleading posts. But now Zuckerberg says his views have shifted, as we heard. He thinks the company has gone too far, and he had particularly harsh words for these fact-checking organizations the company has long partnered with, which are largely nonprofit journalism groups.
But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the U.S.
And we can hear he is very much adopting the framing that President-elect Trump and Republicans have been using for a long time in making attacks on content moderation, even though we know that research shows that online conservative content, is quite popular. Many of the fact checkers I spoke with object to Zuckerberg's framing. They say their work adds context to posts, but ultimately they don't have any power over what Meta decides to do about, keeping up or taking down posts.
So how is this going to work? Will anybody be able to write whatever they want, or is something going to replace the fact checks?
Facebook and Instagram are going to shift to a user-generated community notes program. That might sound familiar. It's the approach that Elon Musk has taken at X. But of course, notes written by users that appear on posts are very different than professional fact-checking, that is, researching the veracity of claims.
Sure.
Now, Mary Louise, this is all part of bigger changes that Zuckerberg is rolling out to deal with that problem we heard him speak about, this problem of over-enforcement and mistakes. So basically, Meta is going to largely pull back on labeling or taking down posts, on handing out suspensions or other penalties outside of areas, it referred to as, quote, illegal and high severity violations, things like terrorism, child sexual exploitation. And it's also notable that Meta is moving its internal content moderation team from California to Texas. And Zuckerberg described that as another way to combat this perception of liberal bias.
Hey, let me raise the timing of this. We're, of course, less than 2 weeks away from President-elect Trump's inauguration. Is that a coincidence?
Well, I spoke with Bill Adair, who's the founder of PolitiFact, which was one of the first fact checkers Meta worked with. I asked him that.
What's happening here is really very political, a response to a change in the political winds and their own concerns about what might happen to them.
Now, Meta has, of course, had a rocky relationship with Trump for a long time. The company suspended Trump from Facebook and Instagram for 2 years following the Capitol riot on January 6, 2021. And recently, during the 2024 election, Trump accused Zuckerberg personally of election interference. He even threatened him with jail time if Trump returned to office. And so, in that context, this move looks like yet another part of Meta's efforts to smooth things over. It's named Dana White, CEO of the Ultimate Fighting Championship and a close ally of Trump, to its board this week. It's elevated a longtime Republican executive, Joel Kaplan, as head of global affairs. It's donated a large sum to Trump's inauguration, and Zuckerberg has visited Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And so it seems like Meta and other tech companies are working very hard to make sure they are on the right side of an incoming administration that has been attacking this industry.
That is NPR's Shannon Bond reporting on the news that Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, they are getting rid of fact checks. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks so much.
I turned the ISO up on my camera, and I have this dark photo of this flag waving, and smoke is, tear gas is coming down, and there's hardly any more people up the top. It just was weirdly over. I walked 2 blocks, called an Uber. I just remember looking at who my driver was going to be, and I was so relieved that this driver was a black man. Because I really honestly couldn't deal with any more white folks that day. I couldn't. I was just over it.
Tomorrow, January 6th, is the 4th anniversary of the attack on the U.S. Capitol, when a mob of Donald Trump's supporters stormed the building trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick was in the middle of it and got soaked with pepper spray. He collapsed that night and died the following day. NPR's Tom Dreisbach visited his family.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Just inside the front door of the Sicknick's house, you can't miss it, is a small table filled with reminders and memories of Brian.
And this we got all this, oh my God.
His mom, Gladys, showed me around. She had 3 sons who all grew up in this house. Brian was the youngest.
This is all his stuff that when he was a kid.
Oh, to mommy, it says.
There's the mementos you'd find in the scrapbooks of a lot of proud parents, all next to awards from national leaders for Brian's service in the military and on January 6th.
Yeah, that flag is from Arlington when they buried him.
Oh, wow.
And that's the gold medal.
This is the Congressional Gold Medal.
We have all kinds of medals and plaques and declarations, but what we don't have is Brian.
That's Brian's dad, Charlie. The Sicknick family has been dealing with the loss of Brian for 4 years now.
It was almost like a little mini-me, so to speak.
Craig Sicknick is Brian's oldest brother. There's a 10-year age gap. And he remembers the little brother who loved to tag along to the Jersey Shore.
It's kind of funny. I know he looked up to me, and of course, as time went on, I started looking up to him. It's like, wow, look at all the stuff he's done,
First, there was Brian's service in the National Guard. He deployed to Saudi Arabia and Kyrgyzstan. But he always wanted to be a cop. And in 2008, he got a job.
And then how did you feel when he joined the Capitol Police?
Oh, we thought it was wonderful.
Very happy for him, because we figured Capitol Police, if you're going to be in law enforcement, this is a pretty safe place to be. Didn't work out,
For the Sicknick family, the memory of January 6th is still right there, not even below the surface. Craig was texting with Brian that day. After the worst of the riot, Brian texted that he'd been pepper sprayed and his clothes were soaked with the stuff, along with the smell of weed from the crowd of rioters. But he was okay. Then, not long after, the family got another message. Brian had collapsed in the Capitol. He was at the hospital, non-responsive. They started rushing from New Jersey down to D.C.
So we're driving down, and on the New Jersey Turnpike, we started getting calls from the press, offering their condolences and asking for our initial opinions. So that's how we learned my brother was dead.
It took months, but the D.C. medical examiner later said that Brian Sicknick died from 2 strokes, officially natural causes. But the medical examiner added all that transpired on January 6th played a role in his condition. Sicknick's family blames the stress and trauma of the riot.
Do you hold Trump personally responsible for Brian's death?
Absolutely.
Certainly. Yes, definitely.
Brian was a Trump supporter, but Trump never contacted the family to offer his condolences. A spokesperson for the Trump team did not answer our question about why. Before the riot, the Sicknicks were not very public or political, and that's one way this experience changed them. They started doing interviews. They went to the sentencing for the man who assaulted Brian with pepper spray, Julian Cater. They wanted to stand up and speak to the court about how Brian's death had affected them.
When we were sitting in the courtroom waiting, he came in an orange jumpsuit, and I'm like, oh my God, you know. So every time I said his name, I looked at him, and he put his head down.
Wow.
Yeah, it was scary to do, but I knew it had to be done.
Why?
Just had to tell people.
Cater was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and in the courtroom, it felt like facts mattered. But in politics, and even with friends, conspiracy theories were everywhere. Charlie says he heard from people. Didn't the police let the rioters in the building? Was it really so bad?
I try not to associate with people who are Trump people, and I have lifelong friends that I don't associate with anymore because of what happened. You know, to them, it's not a big deal because it wasn't their son, you know.
Craig says the experience of people he knew denying reality changed him, made him get into a lot more arguments, especially on social media.
I'm not nice. I used to be nice, used to be decent. I don't tolerate it anymore.
You've got a lot of anger now, it sounds like.
Oh,
Craig.
big time.
Yeah.
You know, I turn into a much angrier, crankier person. People don't like me, I don't care.
But the Sicknicks did care a lot about the 2024 election. They took action. Craig and Gladys both went to the Democratic National Convention. They actively supported Vice President Kamala Harris. Gladys says it felt like keeping active helped her cope, at least for a while.
Just recently is when I've gotten crazy in my head with this stuff, really, and then this election.
What do you mean, crazy?
Just, you know, I cry just because.
When Trump won the election, the Sicknicks were stunned.
I went to sleep hoping for the best. I woke up Wednesday morning, turned on the phone, and said,
sick to your stomach.
Yeah, it took me an extra 2 hours to get to work because I just couldn't get moving. I was depressed enough that it's like, do I even bother anymore?
Mm.
What I'm very upset about that might happen is that he's going to let all these people out of jail. It's just not right.
Trump has promised to pardon January 6 defendants on his first day in office, but hasn't given specifics. A spokesperson for the Trump team said the administration would pardon people they claim were, quote, denied due process and unfairly prosecuted. Last year, Trump said he was open to pardoning people convicted of assaulting police, which might include the man who assaulted Brian. Craig says he expects Trump to whitewash the truth of January 6th. But even in all the pain, they've also found good people. There are the Capitol police officers, Brian's former coworkers, who still check in on them, the random gas station attendant who gives his condolences.
People we met on our honeymoon 55 years ago. We haven't been in touch since, but she sent this quilt with, you know, Brian's picture on it. So.
Oh my goodness. So it must feel like at least some people reached out and still remembered and thought of you.
There's a lot of good people out there.
And the Sicknicks are so proud to be Brian's father, mother, and brother. They show me their metal bracelets they all got in memory of Brian. And then Gladys rolls up her sleeve.
And then I did this, too.
What's that?
Brian's shield.
Oh, it's a tattoo you got with Brian's shield on your forearm.
We're generally not tattoo people. I was amazed when she got that done.
You don't often hear of people getting their first tattoo in their 70s. Gladys told me it was partly because the metal bracelet kind of irritated her wrist. But when it feels like people are no longer interested in Brian's sacrifice on January 6th, the bracelets, the tattoo, all the other mementos seem even more important, and a way to feel like his memory is just a little bit closer. Tom Dreisbach, NPR News.
She's due to spend the next few years behind bars, but she believes one man could change that.
So this hat says, Rachel, we love you. Trump. Three of my sons, they met Trump, and you can actually see them one of the times here. Trump was very encouraging to them. He's made it clear he's going to pardon us.
There's a lot riding on this election.
Totally.
For the country, but also personally for you.
Oh man, for me it's huge. For me it's like life or death. It's huge.
If Trump wins, you could get out of prison.
Correct, I will get out of prison.
Tomorrow marks the 4-year anniversary of the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. And for many of the people who stormed the building in an attempt to stop Congress from certifying Joe Biden's win as president, tomorrow is a day of vindication. Tomorrow, Congress will certify Donald Trump as president. And once he takes office in a few weeks, Trump has promised to pardon people charged with crimes for their roles in the January 6th attack. Trump's own criminal charges tied to that day have been dismissed since winning the White House. And we wanted to take a few minutes to step back and talk about all of this with Tom Dreisbach, who has taken a leading role in NPR's coverage of January 6th and its aftermath. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Scott.
As we think about the scope of all of this, how many people in the end ultimately faced charges or were convicted or pleaded guilty?
Yeah, so NPR has been tracking every single criminal case that has stemmed from the January 6th attack. We have a database that people can visit on our website. And by our numbers, more than 1,500 people were ultimately charged. The majority of those, about 1,000, ended up pleading guilty to those charges, and a few hundred ultimately took their cases to trial. The vast majority were convicted, and the investigation has been ongoing. The FBI has still been on the lookout for multiple suspects who are accused of assaulting police, and arrests were happening, through December.
And let's get back to what I mentioned in the introduction. Many of the people who stormed the Capitol said that the former and now future president, Donald Trump, inspired them to carry out those violent acts in their push to keep him in power. Now we've come full circle. Trump is poised to take power again. What exactly are his plans? What has he said? What has he not said about these pardons?
Well, Trump kind of ran his campaign. I think of it as, honestly, the January 6th election in a way, because his campaign launched with a version of the Star-Spangled Banner as sung by January 6th defendants recorded on a jailhouse phone. And he has repeatedly promised to pardon or commute the sentences of January 6th defendants. Now, the scope of that promise is really vague. He has never been pinned down on exactly whom he would pardon. He was asked last year at the National Association of Black Journalists whether he would pardon people convicted of assaulting police. That was a big open question. And he said yes, he would pardon people who were convicted of assaulting police. The Trump transition team told me that they were going to pardon people who were unjustly prosecuted by what they called a weaponized Justice Department and who were denied due process. But they didn't give any specifics. And of course, all of these defendants had the right to an attorney. And they went through the whole criminal trial system. So it's unclear what they mean by denied due process.
Yeah. He's also said in recent interviews this is something that he could announce or start to work on as soon as his first day in office.
That's right.
You've spent time with the family of a police officer who was assaulted and died the next day. Curious how they feel about this, about the president's plans to pardon people convicted of these violent crimes.
Yeah, I recently spent some time with the family of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. He was pepper sprayed on January 6th, and that night he collapsed in the U.S. Capitol, was rushed to the hospital, non-responsive, and he subsequently died of 2 strokes. And his family is, frankly, devastated by the results of the presidential election. They are really concerned that the man who assaulted their son, who they went to the sentencing for and kind of confronted him in the courtroom, they are really concerned that that person is going to be set free. Brian Sicknick's mother, Gladys, told me that she's just bursting out into tears at various times because she is so upset about what happens. And they told me that their faith in the country has really been shaken.
There's the facts of what happened on January 6th, and there's the attempt to change the narrative, which really began almost instantaneously in some corners and really gained steam politically over the last few years, especially with the results of the last election. These cases, though, they really played a key role in creating a historical record of what happened. I'm curious what you think as somebody who covered them. If Trump does hand out these pardons, do you think that changes how January 6th will be remembered?
Well, yeah, the history of January 6th has always been contested in a way. I mean, there was a brief moment of what felt like consensus, at least on Capitol Hill. You had the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, saying that January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism for which Donald Trump was practically and morally responsible. Those were his words. And now, of course, the Republican Party is lockstep in behind Trump, and Trump has embraced this counter-narrative that January 6th was at worst a group of people who got a little bit out of hand, but they were peaceful protesters who have been unjustly prosecuted by the Biden administration and the Department of Justice. One of the ironies of covering this, over the course of the criminal cases, we've only learned worse facts about what happened on January 6th. We've seen more videos of violence against police. We've seen more evidence of how close the country came to even worse violence. We've learned that rioters went to the Capitol with guns. This is something that Trump has said. No one had guns on January 6th except for the police. That is not true. Now, what happens in the future if Trump pardons, as many as 1,500 plus people? It's unclear. This country is deeply divided, can't agree on a lot of things. The narrative around January 6th, I think, will continue to be contested, even as the facts paint an extremely concerning portrait of serious violence at the People's House, the United States Capitol.
That is NPR investigative correspondent Tom Dreisbach. Tom, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Scott.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years. Say that again. Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
All right, we've got some breaking news. We're following them as well. The FBI just moments ago releasing new video with an appeal for help from the public as it tries to solve one of the biggest mysteries around the January 6th attack on the Capitol. This is the video you're seeing here. A suspect placing one of the bombs near the Democratic National Committee headquarters in D.C. on January 5th, 2021. An explosive was also left at the RNC headquarters. They were real bombs, but they didn't go off. And it's not clear as to why. Something like 600 tips have come in, but so far nothing has led to a break in the case. The FBI still has no suspects and has not determined a motive. I want to bring in Ryan Riley to talk more about this. I was on the steps of the Capitol on January 6th. I remember the fallout from learning that there were these bombs that were found both near the RNC and DNC headquarters. And it's astounding to think that there is still no clarity as to who actually placed them there and what the motive and objective were. Walk us through this video now being released and where they are in this investigation.
Yeah, given all of the news that we've seen elsewhere and all of these other FBI investigations, I think this actually comes at a really important time for informing Americans about just the basics of the FBI, because I think there's this Hollywood image of the FBI and then there's the reality of the FBI. And often that Hollywood image feeds a lot of the conspiracies that we see about what the FBI, because people really just overestimate, I think, their technological capabilities. Massive bureaucracies aren't known for being on the cutting edge of technology all the time. And I think that that's what you sort of got to recognize. With the January 6th case specifically, basically the failure here, what they haven't been able to determine is they haven't gotten a sharp enough image of the suspect's face, and he's very well covered. In fact, some of the sleuths who have worked directly with the FBI and are in fact responsible for hundreds of the arrests that the FBI ultimately made have even went back and forth about whether or not this suspect was a male or a female, and they really, they dove into this. They looked at the shoes. They're really good at following a lot of these leads. The FBI is also attempting to do that now as well. But, I think this investigation, because of the span of the January 6th investigation, really kind of did not get necessarily all of the resources that it would have in a normal time.
I mean, at this point, what is the likelihood that they can solve this thing? And I say that because when you look at the images, and let's bring it up again, guys, if we can, the video of this individual placing these bombs, and then the other image as well of even the individual walking. It is almost impossible. I know they have obviously much more high-tech technology than we have in just watching it on our TV screens, but it's almost impossible to be able to identify these types of individuals. And if you're relying on the public to help out, the memory at this point for many people that may have seen this individual will likely not be very clear.
Yeah, I remember right after January 6th, they put out a request for Ring camera footage that was just outside of the retention request, right? So I think they got some footage, but there was definitely footage in the early days that was missed here. So, you know, I think there are a lot of, there was a report that came out even today from Congress, from Republicans in the House looking back at this, and they said that the FBI had identified several suspects that they looked into preliminarily. But I think you're spot on about that timing, because if you imagine, even if they were able to identify somebody now, getting that over past the, the question of beyond a reasonable doubt is going to be tough, even given how much time has passed. Yes.
I mean, and listen, obviously, also with everything that has just happened over the last 24 hours here in this country at the start of 2025, you have the inauguration just 18 days away at this point, January 6th, a couple of days away as well, the anniversary of January 6th. This individual very much likely still out there. Ryan Riley, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Make some noise and throw up your dubs for the West Coast Don, Ice Cube.
We begin today's show looking at the devastating fires in Los Angeles, where at least 10 people have died. More than 10,000 homes and offices have been damaged or destroyed. Entire neighborhoods have burned down. The death toll is expected to rise. More than 35,000 acres have already burned. The fires continue to burn due to high winds and dry conditions. The largest blaze, the Palisades fire, is just 6% contained. The Eaton fire near Pasadena remains 0% contained. Analysts project the cost of the fires may reach a record $150 billion. The climate-fueled fires come as scientists at the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service have confirmed last year was by far the hottest year on record, with global temperatures exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times for the first time. We're joined now by Peter Kalmus, climate activist, climate scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. He's speaking on his own behalf, not on behalf of NASA. He's just written an opinion essay for the New York Times headlined, "I'm a Climate Scientist. I fled Los Angeles 2 years ago." He joins us now from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Peter, thanks so much for joining us today. Explain why you fled Los Angeles 2 years ago.
Oh, Amy, I just have to take a moment to, I don't know what to say anymore. I'll get to that in a second, but I just want to make sure, the reason I wrote the piece was because we have to acknowledge that this is caused by the fossil fuel industry, which has been lying for almost half a century, blocking action. They're on the record saying that they will continue to spread disinformation and continue to attempt to block action. They've known the whole time that the planet would get hotter like this and that impacts like this fire would happen. And then a point I really wanted to make in the piece, which they wouldn't let me make, is that this is still just the beginning. It's going to get way worse than this. 2 years ago, 2020, when that Bobcat fire happened, the whole time I was living in Altadena, it was getting hotter and more fiery and drier and smokier, and it just didn't feel like I could stay there. Like I could, so when you have a trend line, things getting worse every year, right? Like, where's the point where it breaks? Like you keep going, you keep pushing the system, getting hotter and hotter, getting drier and drier, right? Like emitting more and more carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels. Eventually, things break. I didn't expect my neighborhood to burn this soon.
Explain what's happened, Peter, in Altadena, in the town that you left.
It's complete devastation. I mean, your audience probably has seen some of the images. The neighborhood I lived is gone. I would say the majority of my friends have lost their homes there. Every now and then there's a home that's still standing amidst the ashes and the devastation. I don't even know what kind of rebuilding after this is going to look like and feel like. I don't know how this is going to affect the housing market, the insurance industry going forward. It's the thing, again, I think everyone needs to understand, and I wish the New York Times would have let me make this point, that this is going to get worse. I can see that today just as clearly as I could see how a hotter and drier and more fiery Los Angeles was getting. I mean, I think in the future, if we don't change course very quickly, and maybe it's even too late to avoid some of these much more catastrophic impacts, but I'm fully expecting heat waves to start appearing where 100,000 people die, and then maybe 1 million people die, and then maybe more after that as things get hotter and hotter, because there's no upper limit, right? Like, we keep burning these fossil fuels, fossil fuel industry keeps lying, the planet just keeps getting hotter, these impacts just keep getting worse. It's not a new normal. A lot of climate messaging centers around this idea that it's a new normal. It's a staircase to a hotter, more hellish Earth. And a lot of climate impact predictions have erred on the side of least drama. It's hard for even scientists to wrap our heads around how everything is changing right now on planet Earth. No matter where you look, the indicators, when spring comes, how hot the winter is, habitats that are moving, ice that's melting. Everywhere you look in the Earth system, including, of course, ocean temperatures and land surface temperatures, you're just on this trend towards a hotter planet and all the impacts that are associated with it. And I don't know what it's going to take for us to stop all these stupid wars and come together and actually deal with the emergency that our planet is in the process of becoming less and less habitable, and everything that means. We humanity, we've got a real crisis here, and we're ignoring it. Another paragraph they took out of the piece, both the Democratic presidents, Obama and President Obama and President Biden, they were very proud to expand fossil fuels. President Obama said, all that oil and gas expansion, that was me, people, right after he was done being president at a lecture he gave at Rice University. And now, of course, we have a Republican president coming into office who says this is a hoax, who's gaslighting the people who are following him. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take for conservative working class people to believe what's right in front of their eyes, that the planet is getting hotter, and that we have to come together and stop listening to these clowns who say it's a hoax. I mean, look at it's all around us. Why do I have to be on Democracy Now! Saying this? Right? It's very obvious what's happening.
Well, Peter, we thank you for being with us. We're so sorry about what's happening there in your community and all over Los Angeles. And, of course, we're talking about a heating world, so around the world. And we hope to have you on next week. Peter Kalmus is
my heart breaks for all the victims, too. It's just I can't wrap my head around what's happening.
LA, big city of dreams, but everything in LA ain't always what it seems. You might get fooled if you come from out of town, cause we come from Queens and get down. LA, big city of dreams, but everything in LA ain't always what it seems. You might get fooled if you come from out of town, cause we come from Queens and get down.
Right-wing media and influencers have been blaming the scale of wildfire destruction in Los Angeles on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Billionaire Elon Musk and others circulated screenshots of the LA Fire Department's Racial Equity Action Plan. The city's fire chief also happens to be the first woman and openly gay person in that role. The chief, her fire department, and the city government have become targets in right-wing media. NPR's Lisa Hagen reports on how it's part of a wider pattern.
Here's what it sounds like to blame a national tragedy on workplace diversity training. This is Charlie Kirk, founder of the right-wing nonprofit Turning Point USA, on his podcast this week.
When you focus your government on diversity, equity, inclusion, LGBTQ pet projects and you are captured by environmentalists, we have been warning for years that you are worried about abstractions, but you can't do the basic stuff.
This has become a common refrain for some on the right for all kinds of disasters and tragic events, including the Baltimore bridge collapse, aircraft safety failures, and the effectiveness of the Secret Service. Stoking anger about diversity efforts is shorthand for a much larger story, according to Ian Haney-Lopez.
The story is something like this. We as a society used to hire on the basis of competence and meritocracy, but that system has been hijacked by powerful minorities.
He's a law professor at the University of California, Berkeley, who focuses on evolving forms of racism.
Again and again, we see these efforts to trigger people's latent resentments against groups that historically have been socially marginalized, socially reviled, but to do so in terms that seek to clothe themselves in a commitment to fairness or excellence.
It's the definition of a dog whistle, he says, and it's taken various forms since at least the end of the Civil War. As for DEI's impact on putting out wildfires,
I give it only slightly more credibility than the Jewish space laser theories.
Mike Beasley is with Firefighters United for Safety, Ethics, and Ecology. He fought fires for 40 years and says there are many serious discussions these fires should raise about climate change, funding firefighters, water management, housing development, aging infrastructure. But
no fire agency is going to sacrifice training in fundamental fire control, fundamental operations at the expense of DEI training.
Lily Zhang has done DEI consulting for 10 years.
The impact of this toxic discourse has been a chilling effect on people's ability to talk about DEI and to communicate their commitment to it.
Zhang says DEI efforts are attempts to push the status quo toward meritocracy, but popular distortions about it and things like critical race theory have been fueled by right-wing think tanks and influencers like Chris Rufo. Here he is on YouTube last year.
We want to say it over and over and over. We want people to be thinking about DEI, people to be debating about DEI, talking about DEI in policy language. But then we want to translate this into a concrete and emotional space.
Here's Zhang again.
And the playbook was very simple. Take some usually progressive or even centrist idea, ideally one that is not well understood, character assassinate it by associating it with everything bad under the sun. It's anti-meritocracy. It's evil.
In LA, investigators are still working to determine what sparked the fires. More of the extreme Santa Ana winds that have made firefighting nearly impossible there are expected to return. Lisa Hagen, NPR News.
So the purpose for that is to always remember that there is something unknown, like you breathing. And that's something you do all the time. Exhale, inhale, inhale, exhale, exhale, inhale. And you do this without thinking about it. But every now and then you ought to think about it.
Well, air quality here in the Los Angeles region has plummeted because of smoke from 4 major wildfires. It's a health problem that people across the country have become familiar with in recent years as climate change increases the risk and intensity of wildfires. NPR's Alejandra Barunda is here to explain the health risks and how people can protect themselves. Hi, Alejandra.
Hi there.
Hi. Okay, I have been smelling the smoke all day. I actually feel lightheaded right now as we speak. Can you just spell out for us from a health perspective, how would you describe the air quality situation in LA at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, the fires are actively burning right now, so things are changing really quickly across the region. And so scientists measure air quality with something called the Air Quality Index, or AQI, and on a normal day in LA, it might be 50 or 60 or a little higher. But near the fires right now,
we have values going up to 400, which is absolutely huge.
That's Tarek Ben-Marnia. He's a climate and health scientist at the University of California, San Diego. And he says things are worst right near the fires, but air quality is in a dangerous range for millions of people across the LA basin.
Absolutely. Okay, so then my next question is, how does all this wildfire smoke in the air compare to, say, car pollution or other types of air pollution that we might breathe in on a typical day, especially in a major city like Los Angeles?
That is a great question. So first off, wildfires, they burn at really high temperatures, and that makes their ash more toxic than other pollution like car exhaust. And here in this case, there's also the fact that it's not just trees and plants that are burning. Lisa Miller is a wildfire smoke expert at the University of California, Davis.
The man-made materials, so things in cars, things in homes. Think of all the synthetic fibers that are present in your living room, right? In your couch, in your carpet, maybe even your clothes. All of those things can be particularly toxic.
Yeah, it's just this toxic soup. And scientists don't yet have a great handle on exactly how bad it is for long-term health, but they're quite confident that it's not good.
Not good. I mean, what are some of the lasting health effects of breathing in wildfire smoke? How much do we know?
It's another good question. Malin Wilgus is a doctor and researcher at UCLA, and she compares the smoke exposure to smoking a lot of cigarettes. So on a day like this one, where the AQI levels are somewhere in the maybe 100 to 200 range, away from the fire perimeter, she says
the exposure to fine particulate matter, air pollution, is similar to smoking, a quarter to half a pack a day.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's not good for a healthy person, but it's even more of a problem for people with pre-existing health issues. Like research, for example, shows that ER visits for respiratory issues like asthma or COPD, they go way up during smoke events. Sometimes they can even double. And emergency departments, they also see more issues for cardiovascular problems as well.
And what other groups of people are at particular risk right now?
So, of course, the first responders and the firefighters, they're being exposed to the worst of the smoke. But a lot of the doctors I talk with have also said be really careful with your kids because they breathe in more air relative to their body size, so they're getting more smoke. Pregnant people should also take care, and older folks and those with pre-existing health problems.
Okay, so real quick, how should we all be protecting ourselves right now when there's all this smoke?
So the best thing to do is get out of the smoke entirely, but if you can't evacuate the area, doctors and scientists say try to stay indoors with the windows tightly shut. Limit your activity. Use an air filter if you have one. And if you have to go outside, maybe use an N95 mask like from COVID, because those are pretty good at blocking tiny particles from getting into your lungs.
That is Alejandra Barunda from NPR's Climate Desk. Thank you so much, Alejandra.
Thanks so much.
Peace, quiet, and good order will be maintained in our city to the best of our ability. Riots, melees, and disturbances of the peace are against the interest of all our people, and therefore cannot be permitted.
The jury found that they were all not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
There's a series of fires, a lot of looting is going on, a disaster area, obviously.
The jury found that they were all not guilty, not
Make
guilty.
it rough.
Guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
A lot of activity continues here in the West Coast. Make it rough. We have sporadic fires throughout the city of Los Angeles.
Not guilty,
the guilty devils try to kill me. When the news get to the hood, the niggas will be hotter than cayenne pepper. Cuss, bust, picking up dust is a must.
Now to Los Angeles, a city that is battling one of the largest wildfires in U.S. history. The flames remain uncontained. Close to 180,000 residents have been evacuated. As the fire engulfs more homes and buildings, at least 10 people have died, 10,000 buildings have been destroyed, and another 60,000 are at risk. More than 8,000 personnel have been deployed to fight the blaze. Local authorities are working tirelessly to bring it under control, but strong winds have made firefighting difficult. It could take days to fully extinguish the flames. The wildfires have triggered lawlessness too. There are growing reports of looted homes as more people abandon their homes to save their lives. Here's a report.
Los Angeles is burning. It's a scale of devastation the city has never seen before. At least 10 people have died. The fires have spread across 35,000 acres. 10,000 buildings have been destroyed. Another 60,000 are at risk. The damages are worth well over $100 billion. This is the costliest wildfire in U.S. history.
Based on the devastation that is clear, it looks like a bomb, an atomic bomb dropped in these areas.
Videos like these paint a grim picture. Multiple wildfires are burning across Los Angeles now. None of them are anywhere close to being contained. The skies are buzzing with aircraft dropping retardants and water on the flames, but these efforts are making little impact. For the victims of this fire, these losses are personal and real. Los Angeles is home to Hollywood. The wildfire is even threatening the city's iconic Hollywood sign. Many A-list celebrities have lost their homes. This includes names like Mel Gibson, Adam Brody and Paris Hilton, who shared a video of her charred home in Malibu. These fires have been raging for 3 days now. Thousands of firefighters still remain overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the blaze. It's being made worse by strong winds and the lack of rain. Looters are now taking advantage of the chaos. They are raiding empty homes and shops which have been abandoned. At least 20 arrests have been made so far.
If anybody is involved in looting or any property damage, that he is ready to prosecute to the full extent of the law.
There are now 8,000 personnel on the ground trying to stop these raging wildfires and maintain order. Yet the crisis remains beyond control. California Governor Gavin Newsom has now called in troops from the National Guard. This is a military reserve force, and they have been asked to put an end to the looting. Misinformation is also spreading as fast as the wildfire. This video is doing the rounds. It shows a group of men taking goods from a home. On social media, users have claimed this is footage of looters in Los Angeles, but that's incorrect. Turns out this is an old video, and it's not from Los Angeles, but from Compton. And these men are not looting this home, they were helping the homeowner move. The crisis in Los Angeles shows how extreme weather events are intensifying. And this exposes just how unprepared our communities, our governments and public spaces are to deal with it.
Appreciate it, Cube. Gus T, Renegade, the worthless Negro from Virginia. Context of White Supremacy in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, January 11, 2025. So I have been told. Before we get to anything for all of the non-white people victims of white supremacy in the California area. Hopefully you all are safe. If you had to evacuate, hopefully you were able to get out safely, didn't have any loss of life, major property. I know we heard from Z's mommy yesterday. I think she said it was her sister said 4 of the people that she worked with, their house burned down. I was speechless. Like, whoa. Whoa. Man, hopefully you are safe, family safe, property, livelihood, and if you are in an area that didn't have to go through all those evacuations and such in Southern California, hopefully you have superb air filters and are able to just stay in the house, windows closed, blinds closed, air filter on. Do the best you can to preserve your lung health. But man, I was watching news reports. In fact, Gus T just being in, all of this would have been super different, my response to all of this, if I had not just been in LA and in some of the very areas that they're talking about. In fact, when I was talking about my, what shall I say, displeasure with my LA experience, I said if I had to go back for research purposes, and even research purposes, man, my California experience continues to be the greatest travel experience of my life, even this week. Now, I've been back over 30 days now from California. Even after 30 days of being back, I'm still getting constructive material from California. And in fact, I was so on business. I put in my request to get Jonestown audio archives from UCLA that I missed because I was only in LA for 8 days. Put in my request before the end of the term in 2024, before everyone left for so-called Christmas break, winter break. The first day of the quarter was this Monday. What was Monday? J6 Insurrection Day. What did I get on the first day of the quarter? All of the audio files I requested from UCLA. Greatest counter-racist travel, not even counter-racist, it would just be greatest travel experience of my existence. Counter-racist or no. Wow. Any hoodles. But that was on Monday. Today, and I'd said previously, I said if I had to go back to LA, for whatever reason, it would be super expensive for whomever. If they say we need you, to come down here and help us do research or counter-racist project or whatever, cook us some vegan lasagna and a sweet potato pie, whatever it is, it would be super expensive, and I can't be there long. That was what I said, and I said if I had to go back, I would want to stay on the UCLA part of town. That would be like West LA area. Man, if I didn't look today and they were talking about the ongoing fires, because I thought they had kind of got things under control a little bit and contained it maybe a little bit yesterday. Not at all. I'm looking today, and they said, oh, wait a minute. Nope, we got evacuation, and boom, boom, boom. They were talking about the fires in different places. I looked, and they said, okay, we evacuated in the Palisades in this place. The UCLA area is on alert, meaning on alert for evacuation. Excuse me. I was speechless. Like, do what? Do what? How are they? What? Man, I'm stunned. I'm absolutely stunned. I don't know. Just best to everyone, the non-white people in the area. I know we have a lot of cows listeners and such in the Southern California area, and even if you're not directly in the zone, or hopefully you're not in the zone of the fires, but even still, the air quality, that is no joke. Everything that they said, my primary grouse about Los Angeles was the air quality. Look, can I crib full of one more time? What's better than breathing? That's what I said. That's what I said. I was grousing about the air quality back in October. There were no wildfires. They've had repeated wildfires since I did. I'd said that last month. Like, oh my goodness. Like, if I had been there when they were having a wildfire, I really, and then like the threat of, oh my goodness, is this, going to impact? Are we going to have to evacuate or, whatever else? And like, oh my goodness, like, man. Anyway, all of this had a very different impact on old Gus T, just because having just been in that area in all of this and recognize, like again, Malibu, man, second time when they had the wildfires last month, they were also in Malibu. I was in Malibu. I told you all that. Went out on the beach. I said I sat out on the beach in Malibu. I said climate change is going to take all of this. I was thinking sea level change. I just talked about this. I said the beach is so narrow, it's almost in the house's backyard. I think some of those houses burned down. I was not even thinking why, even though I knew I had seen the wildfires in the news and such. We have wildfires up here in Washington State. They just had wildfires in Canada, Western Canada, obviously, and the wildfire smoke knows no borders. It drifted right on down here, messed up the whole summer in 2017. Had exactly the same recommendations that they get. You got to keep the blinds closed, and you got to keep the windows closed, and you have to keep the blinds closed. I remember 2017 when they had the Canadian wildfires. The soot and smoke was so bad in the air, you could have the window closed like all day long, blinds closed, and you could just go and it would be a thick line or layer of soot and debris on the window seal. You just have to have like the air filter on all day long. Woe be to those if you have any sort of respiratory issues, asthma, anything like that. I hope people are informed. Because of the system of white supremacy racism, you have a disproportionate number of people classified as black who have asthma and respiratory issues that came out with COVID-19. So, oh man, they have any sort of event that impacts air quality. And children, they said that in the report. Children. Children with asthma, that's like the double whammy. You got lots of black people in that group. All this would have been substantially different for me if I had not just been in Los Angeles. And some, like I said, some of the exact Santa Monica, some of the exact regions that are on fire and they had all the losses and such, or had to evacuate, or, whatever. I cannot leave out, and in fact, my LA experience is right there. That Ice Cube rendition of Today Was a Good Day. Date specific, that is live performance, October 26, 2024, Dodger Stadium, Game 2 of the World Series. Gus T was in L.A., not at Dodger Stadium. I was at the film festival in Hollywood. In Hollywood, they just said the Hollywood sign is threatened. Are you serious? Now, I said when I was there, man, the smog is so bad, you can't even see the Hollywood sign at times. And I'm in Hollywood, like I'm close. It's not like I'm on the other side of the city or anything. Like really, I couldn't see the sign at times because we were so close. It was where's the Hollywood sign? Where's the Hollywood sign? Oh, we're underneath it, I see. That's how close we were. We were in Hollywood. I'd said that, before I even got there, like, oh wow, we're not just in LA. We are in Hollywood for the film festival. Even from Hollywood, the smog was so bad at times. It's like, ooh-wee, can you see? Ooh, it's going to be a bad picture. I cannot even imagine what that would be like now. But that was Cube performing at the World Series October 26th. That day will be etched in my brain computer because Gus T had been grousing about his LA experience I got to LA on Tuesday, so I had been grousing for 5 days at this point. But I knew, hey, we're at the halfway point. We will be out of here on Wednesday, so we got here. We made it this far. We are going to be all right. We're going to get out of here. Going to make it. We're going to make it. Hopefully. Whew. I was sitting outside. It was 70 degrees. It had been 80 degrees Fahrenheit the first 4 days. From Tuesday through Friday, it had been in the 80s, and Game 1 of the World Series was that previous Friday. I wish I had saved the physical copy of the paper. It was Carmageddon. Now, that's a different type of smog in the air, but Carmageddon. Sit in traffic for 10 hours to go 10 meters. 10 kilometers, please. Sit in traffic 10 hours to go 10 meters. Carmageddon, they called it. Game 1 of the World Series. Saturday was Game 2. Saturday afternoon, I was sitting outside the theater. It was 71 degrees. I checked the weather report for Seattle. It was 50 degrees and raining here in Seattle. It was 70, 71, and sunny in LA. I was sitting outside. I was getting work done on my laptop. They had a barista who was making the VIPs like myself at the film festival who had badges. You can go to the VIP section. They had baristas who were making whatever you want. I got a vegan oat milk pumpkin latte. I sat on my laptop, got work done. The weather was so lovely. I had already had my tickets for all the movies I was going to see that day, which included, make sure I get my film score, which included Unstoppable. Jennifer Lopez was present. They asked her about Diddy. Trifling heifers. And I was up there like, J-Lo is not going to be here. As I sipped my pumpkin vegan latte, warmed, I said, J-Lo is not coming. I talked to Moses, my black brother. He was one of the staff folks for the festival. He said, yes, she is. Unstoppable. Thinking black people. Unstoppable. She's coming. She's going to be there. J-Lo and the whole cast for Unstoppable. Well, not the whole cast, but some of the main people. Anthony Robles, they're going to be there, and it's going to be amazing. And, oh, my goodness, you're so jealous that you're going to see the film, Gus. And, man, Moses, he was way more excited about it than I was, and he knew J-Lo was going to be there, and she was. They asked her about Diddy. But it was an amazing day. And, in fact, even before we even got to that, I was working on my laptop. I talked to Moses. I got my latte. Battery started going down. I went to the VIP lounge outlet. I plugged in. Super gorgeous non-white female. Like Hollywood gorgeous. She had like her Hollywood red dress, red heels, snatched. Do the young people still say that? Snatched. Red toenail polish. In fact, they had the red carpet downstairs for like the movie. I told you, J-Lo and Ryan Coogler, all these big time actors. Jude Law it's Hollywood, all these folks are there. So they had the red carpet. A lot of these films were premiering. She looked, I am ready for the red carpet with my red dress and red toenail polish. Young lady comes. Can I sit right here? At that, I did take a pause and say, you know what? I'm going to stop grousing about L.A. for at least a day or two. You can at least enjoy the view, yes? I will enjoy the view. Then I click back to the seat is available. Yes, ma'am. You're not bringing a white person, are you? Okay, right on. Sat down, click. How much can I grouse about L.A.? We were sitting outside at this point, so I couldn't even complain about the smog. How much can I complain? I could have been in Seattle in the rain. I stopped complaining for the day. The 2 days, I didn't complain that Sunday either. And then I got to go see J-Lo. What are you complaining about? What are you complaining? In fact, the day was so great, I saw September 5. That's a film. This was October 26, but I saw the film September 5 that day. I forgot about it until I saw the trailer today. Like, I saw that film already. It was really good. And it's about Hitler, Nazi, Germany. Everything was about racism. Everything I saw was about racism. It's like, wow, I saw a really good film and totally forgot about it. Like, dang, but that was a good day. And while all that was happening, and the filmmakers were there for September 5, just like the film Unstoppable, J.Lo was present. What a day. Game 2 of the World Series. Ice Cube sings A Good Day. Plus, nobody I know got killed in South Central L.A. That's a good day for colored people in Los Angeles. Like, woo! He sings that song in Dodger Stadium. Now, I didn't become aware that they had that live show, and it was a big deal. I don't know if people were aware, but that was like a big deal. Almost up there with Dr. Dre performing at the Super Bowl, his performance at the World Series, and all of that. But it was a relatively good, as good as things could be on the plantation was that Saturday. Now, that said, it was escape from L.A., which I talked about because they did burn a bus. They had burning and looting prior to the wildfires this week. The Dodgers did win the World Series, and they won Game 2 after the Ice Cube performance, and they went on to win the World Series, and man, burned a whole bus down. They did. A whole bus. On the day I left, no less. On the day I left. On the day I escaped to San Francisco, they burned a whole bus down. Man. L.A., man. That's air quality, too. Man, when they talk about synthetic materials, you can imagine all kinds of synthetic materials are in L.A. public bus. Right on for the metro. Any hoodles, I talked about some of this. I guess the LA component was so much I didn't get to talk about that. I was going to do a whole program about that in the film festival so I could talk about, like, what films exactly did you see in LA? Because I saw over a dozen films. September 5 was one. Soundtrack to Coup d'etat, obviously. The Order. Unstoppable. J.Lo is in that one. Great. Lots of films that were all about racism. But that was not what the trip was for. That was just an extra. Even that was an extra add-on. Me going to Malibu, that was an extra add-on. Going to Santa Monica, that was an extra add-on. And then all these places are, woo, man, wacky. Anyway, all of that with Los Angeles, the flames, now they're having all these fires and talking about is it looting? Talking about is this arson? Brentwood area was impacted. I was again flabbergasted. If I had maybe one extra day, I kept saying, I want to go to Brentwood. I want to go to Brentwood. I want to go travel to the Brentwood. Hello, do y'all? Come on. I want to go to Brentwood. Renthal James, my black brother, we miss you. Put down some flowers and just pay my respects. My innocent black brother, no longer with us, Renthal James. But even the Brentwood folks said, oh, my goodness, are we going to have to leave? Evacuation? I posted it. I said if Renthal James was still here, they'd be saying OJ has been burning and looting in Brentwood and probably raping, killing white women. I used the AI. I didn't even know that they had the Grok AI creator on there. I used it to make a picture of Renthal James in Los Angeles with a gas can. Individuals, some of them classified as white, had the audacity to tell me that they thought it was in bad taste. They spent all these years slandering Renthal James, saying he's guilty and all the rest. They're going to tell me that that's in bad taste. I was thinking, it's probably true. Anyway, I thought the AI, Elon Musk, they could get the computer to make a Renthal James with a gas can looking like a looter in L.A. Nighttime and everything. Make him dark, everything like Time Magazine. But they could not get Reverend Jim Jones with Tupac and Eazy-E. Could get Tupac, could get Eazy-E, couldn't figure out who this Jim Jones fellow was. Now, how is that? Anyway, different aspect of California history. Yes, we'll get back to current events with the wildfires. So I took transformative experience life-changing experience going to California, and then with these wildfires, now that it's happened twice, keep going over in my mind. Like, I was very stressed. Like, I told her I didn't even want to go to California because I said, man, this is stressful and dangerous. I said for the 8 days that I was there, I was telling people, like, I kept having nightmares that I was going to get stuck in Los Angeles. Like, I was going to be killed, or the riot would happen and I would miss my plane and I'd be stranded in Los Angeles and I'd be in front of the Intuit Dome selling oranges. I kept saying that over and over, that I was having nightmares of that. Like, I've got to get out of LA. This place is awful. Like, number one, the air quality. Also, I said the food. I live in Seattle. I have been here the whole time that the C.O.W.S has been on. 16 years I've been in Seattle. Where do you live in Seattle? The place I live in Seattle, I can walk across the street and get Ethiopian. If I'm really plucky, I can walk 5 blocks and have options for Ethiopian, like mini restaurants, like more than 2, in addition to the one that I just mentioned where I'd be walking across the street. I can walk across the street and get vegan eggnog oatmeal. Vegan eggnog ice cream. Probably oatmeal too, but vegan eggnog ice cream that's locally made. If I'm feeling plucky, I can walk 5 blocks. Vegan cinnamon rolls. Plucky, I can walk 1 mile. Vegan Thai buffet. Hey, if I'm on the other side of town, University of Washington, I could go vegan Thai buffet. And we could just go on and on. Like, there's no, I would starve if I was not at my residence to have a smoothie or make yummy, delicious, healthy food. Not at all. I would do well and could pretty much have my gander of whatever I am having a hankering for in terms of food at that moment. Anything, and it would be vegan, probably organic too. That is not the case in Los Angeles. I told you I was inundated with hot dogs. Hot dog trucks and hot dog trucks and hot dog trucks. And McDonald's everywhere. And I told you the McDonald's stood out even more because we don't have McDonald's like that in Seattle. We do have McDonald's, but they're not everywhere. It would take, like I said, some thinking for me to ponder, like, now, where's the closest McDonald's to where? And I think it might be on 3rd, which, you know, that's another story. But downtown, I think that might be the closest one. But, I mean, they just don't have McDonald's everywhere. They have McDonald's like every other corner in even in Hollywood. They got McDonald's everywhere. And I just seen a study that talked about how that is one metric for how unhealthy the area where you live is. Do they have lots of McDonald's, Taco Bells, lots of those? That would probably be an indicator you have lots of cheap, unhealthy food. Oh yeah, this is probably not the healthiest place to be. And I said specifically, words here important. I didn't come across any farmers markets while I was in Los Angeles. Now, I didn't go looking. I know they have farmers markets in Los Angeles. I saw them advertised. I'm saying I did not see or come across any farmers markets during the 8 days that I was there. In San Francisco, I stumbled upon a farmers market. I arrived on Wednesday. By Saturday, I stumbled on a farmers market. By Sunday, I had made a purchase at a farmers market. I was not looking for either. That's how I presented, because San Francisco is a substantially smaller city than Los Angeles. I didn't look for a farmer's market in either place, but they were kind of ubiquitous in the Bay Area. I thought they would be ubiquitous in California, but not in L.A. At least not my experience. I was told you got to know the places to look for the farmer's market. That's not my reality. Not for Seattle either. They have farmers markets all over the city, all the time. I could walk to a farmer's market tomorrow, about the same distance I said to the vegan cinnamon rolls. That's what I've been accustomed to for years, well over a decade. So we are going to a substantially worse place, like a third world country, to think, uh-oh, you got to know the right way. They got to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for you to find something healthy, much less deal with all the smog. Like, ugh. Ugh. I hope we don't have to stay here too long. Anyway, all of that for context. Before I get back to an email with a California person, I have to bring this up because we just talked about this as well. I said I can't leave this out. This has to be a quick snippet. Anytime I see this now, and you all have license as well, anytime that you see, read, hear someone talk about racism, white supremacy, and they say, now, not all white people is racist, please let me know. We should make like a compilation of all of those clips. And I would also add, if you know anyone who says, yes, all white people are racist, other than Gus T and the cows, if you know someone who says that, please also share that with me, because I really struggled. I could think of, like, if you just called me on the spot right now and said, can you list off some people who say in a scholarly manner, like they've written out and they have their reasoning as to why not all white people are racist. Yes, Neely Fuller Jr., Edward Williams Jr., Andre Bloom, Dr. Maya Angelou, black male who hosts the YouTube channel Cop Watch. Like, I could give you 5 really quick. Boom, boom, boom. Males and females. Boom, boom, boom. All ages and what have you. No problem. If you said, give me a non-white person, scholar, like they wrote a book, did a presentation, all white people are racist, not name calling, these crackers, and no. Same way that you hear Fuller give his victims guaranteed qualified viewpoint, same way Pam wrote out that I read a few weeks ago, same way I'm about to read from Dr. Angelo. They wrote it out, they did a video project, I've looked at the evidence, long period of time, global analysis of people who say that they are white, and based on the evidence and history, the conclusion is white people, all of them, they support the system of white. Like, who says that? If you know, folks, let me know, because I struggled to even get one on the list. I said maybe Dr. Khalid Muhammad, but I said that's kind of some into the name calling and, devil and that sort of thing. And I said, I really just want the, this is not name calling. We're not doing no cracker and all of that. This is just calmly looking, scientifically looking at the evidence. And this is my conclusion. I really can't think of anyone. If you can, but like I said, the other way, oh yeah, and it's way more than the 5. I just gave 5, off the top of my head, but it is racks of people. Like, woo. Now, not all white. Now, the newest one that we got on the list, Dr. Maya Angelou, I'm just reading this because, like, wow, did that really happen? We read back-to-back books where a black author who was born on 2 different continents. So we got one person born in North America, genuine, homegrown, black, U.S., authentic, for real black person, and then we got old pretend black person born on the continent with a white parent, no less. But even still, they both got to say in their memoir that's all about racism, white supremacy, and white people killing Patrice Lumumba and all kinds of black people, got to say, now, not all white people is racist. We got it twice in the book this week. In fact, 2 times. So let's see. The first time it pops up, and from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the first time around, no less. First time Martin stood and the personal tenderness disappeared. He became the fighting preacher, armed and ready for the public fray. He came over to my desk. Please accept my thanks, and remember, we are not alone. There are a lot of good people in this nation, white people who love right and are willing to stand up and be counted. Love. His voice had changed back to the mellifluous Baptist cadence raised for the common good. We shook hands, and I wondered if his statement on the existence of good whites had been made for Stanley Levinson's benefit. Stanley Levison is a white man, racist suspect, but I thought that was important that Dr. Angelo even had that thought, like, I don't know, is this sincere? Is he just saying that because this white man is here? Like, which happens to a lot of us victims frequently. We say things just because white people are present. Sometimes we lie just because white people are present. I don't know if that was happening right there or not, but that was one. And so then this pops up again pretty quickly. In fact, next time it pops up, Hazel, Millie, and I walked down a block from the office, pushing through the jubilant crowd. We watched as Castro and Khrushchev embraced on 125th Street, as the Cubans applauded and the Russians smiled broadly, showing metal teeth. Black people joined the applause. Some white folks weren't bad at all. The Russians were okay. Of course, Castro never called himself white, so he was okay from get. Anyhow, America hated Russians, and as black people often said, wasn't no communist country that put my grandpapa in slavery, wasn't no communist, lynched my papa or raped my mama. And she goes on, but some white folks weren't bad at all. Victims guaranteed qualified. She even goes on to talk about a white woman that she trusted immediately just because, I don't know, she said she wanted to leave a legacy for her white children or something about what she did to fight against racism. Not all white people is racist. That is a very common, in fact, it's so commonly held just on that alone. The cliche saying is, when everyone thinks alike, no one thinks. Isn't that the cliche saying? I do think there is some truth in that, where maybe our brain computer has not been working. Maybe we have been carrying a lot of false concepts, a lot of beliefs that are completely erroneous, that have retarded our ability to solve this problem. That's one that I submit right there. Stop saying, writing, thinking. Not all white people are racist. It is not evidence-based. Really, it's hope more than anything, and that's not something we need to hope for. We need logic and really just to get serious about solving problems. But stop saying and writing, not all white people are racist. We at least need a few people to push back and say, no, wait a minute, brother, sister, maybe y'all got that one wrong. Maybe because the evidence shows we got a lot of things wrong, so maybe that's one. Hopefully I get VGQ as well. And if I don't, no problem neither. Now, back to California. Speaking of VGQ, have I said like I'm estranged from C.O.W.S listeners? I've said that, like I'm not cool with y'all. I actually had several people ask me, like, Gus T, you actually do have a phone now. Yes, I do have a phone now. How come you don't give out your number? I'm not cool with y'all. They said, who is y'all? All of the other people on the planet. Ooh, that's kind of wide. Yes, that is very wide. That would be C.O.W.S listeners included. Now, part of the reason is, Fuller said this the first time he came on the C.O.W.S, the very first time. And it is true. He said, we don't know this, but frequently we only contact non-white people to be in conflict. That is true. That is true. I've had so many times, non-white people, we have no correspondence. Like, we don't talk at all about anything. Nothing. Like Seahawks, counter-racism, yoga, Brussels sprouts, nothing. And that's fine, right? Minimize contact, no problem. But they will leap out to have contact, to have conflict, where they do not agree. And generally, it'll be like, I do not agree that you like Brussels sprouts. It'll be something that, this is subjective. It won't be, Brother Gus, I disagree. You said that 1 + 1 = 5. I'm like, I could see then, perhaps, even if we don't have rapport, if you want to make sure that you get that corrected, 1 + 1 is not 5. I can see that, strive for accuracy. But it'll be contact about, Brother Gus, Brussels sprouts are not that tasty. Well, that's subjective, and great that you have that opinion. You're missing out. More Brussels sprouts for me, I guess. But why did you feel the need to contact me for that? It'll be a lot of that type of correspondence with people who are likely classified as black, although sometimes I don't know because it's social media or email, that sort of thing, or even they'll call in sometimes, so I don't really know because I don't know them personally. But we engage in a lot of this, even on a personal level. Sometimes the people that I do have contact with, we seek out non-white people for conflict, and we don't do this with white people because we know white people, they put the smack down. We just do this for we read about that with Dr. Maya Angelou, where she got sassy and gangster and pulled her pistol out with these black people. Like, okay, now all of the wild things that white people do. Just saying. Anyway, so back to California. Now, I talked about my California sojourn that was centered around Jonestown. Centered around Jonestown, nearly 200 black children being killed, approximately 700 black people being killed all in one swoop, and it's all been reduced to giggles about Kool-Aid. Now, I do programs. I'm talking about the LA component, the film festival component, even though that kind of got short shrift, understandably so. And then what I was doing out in the Bay Area. We had some person call me. I just have to go directly to the emails, man, because this even another rule. So this is the first time that this person ever contacted me. Hollywood bad food. That's the subject title for the email. I'm an LA native and Dodgers fan, and I'm listening to your election broadcast. You were in the wrong neighborhood. Should you return, perhaps I could advise you. Now, I can only say, black dudes especially, I really don't have this with other people because white people generally do not contact me and lead with sports, nor females generally. They don't generally contact me, their admiration for Mike Tyson or pretty boy Floyd Mayweather. It's generally just black males who will contact me, and the lead will be something their, love affair with the Philadelphia Eagles, and man, I sure hope Jalen Hurts is okay and they can do all right in the playoffs, and man, I hope Pat, my homeboy, and them get the 3. It'll be something connected to that, and then they want to get to racism. Like, for real. If you just sports, you're a former athlete, or you just grew up watching sports and ball games, it's just your thing. I wouldn't care if it's track and field. You're a Carl Lewis aficionado, Caitlin Clark. I wouldn't care what it is. If you are about sports, do not contact me for any reason. Even when I said that, I was going to say while I was in California, but that's not specific enough. This was while I was at the Oakland Cemetery on the 18th, Jonestown Memorial. I'm at the cemetery, and a black male, victim, but a black male, is coming up and it's, man, that Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight, I kept saying, throw the uppercut, you gotta throw the uppercut, man, and he said it. I was so disappointed in Mike Tyson. I'm like, I did not come all this distance, and I don't even like traveling to come and hear you grouse about the Mike Tyson fight. We've been grousing about Mike Tyson fights for 30 years now. I came to learn about Jonestown. Like, gee, and then while he's doing this, I can hear that some of the family members and such are talking about Jonestown. So I had to quickly excuse myself. And he did get right, and he did come over and start listening and even asking questions appropriately about Jonestown. Not Mike Tyson, but it only lasted for a short period, because soon as the arrangement ended, he came right back up. He said, man, you throw that uppercut and pow, you don't let that white boy hit on you, throw that jab and pow, pow, get him to throw that thing. I was so mad at Mike. White people are most to blame. But no, do not come and waste my time and energy, because I don't do that. You haven't heard me come on here. I've lived in a city where we won a Super Bowl, yes. I was here. We broadcasted for that. I wouldn't, get them Rusty Poo, man. Get them. No, man. They played the great Tom Brady in the Super Bowl the next year. What was I doing? Was I even watching the game? We were talking to Dr. Frances Cresswell. What my man say? Check my record. We were talking to Dr. Frances Cresswell, and she was with us for 4 hours. She was here for the entire duration of the game. Are they going to repeat? Did Tom Brady win? Who knows? Talking to Dr. Frances Cresswell. Priorities, man. Priorities. So I don't care about no Dodgers. Like, if anything, I knew the Dodgers in the World Series. That made my trip even worse. If the Dodgers had not been in the World Series, they wouldn't have rioted and burned that bus down. Maybe I could have got a little bit more work done before I got out of L.A. But because of your beloved Dodgers, it's escape from L.A. I had the practice run for you. All had to do it for the wildfires. So I'm continuing with email from random person. And even the black people do so much of this, which repulses me. Like non-white people, victims of racism. Like, you don't know where my hotel was. You don't know where I stayed. The wrong neighborhood. Like, who in the F are you? Full stop there. And again, I cannot conceptualize where would I be at in Seattle to be in the wrong neighborhood to get healthful food. I don't even, my brain is, what? It's got the little spinning beach ball for people that have Mac technology. I can't even compute that. Like, what are you talking about? And really, I'm in California. My thinking, it should be the same thing. What are you talking about? The wrong neighborhood for bad food? And I was in Hollywood. But now that's on flame, so I guess that might be the bad neighborhood too. Anyway, continuing. I wrote him back, I don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. Went to various places, talked about UCLA, whatever. This person, when I'm talking about the air quality, I continue to emphasize the air quality because I said that was the #1 problem that I had in a place where I said the food options weren't as great as I'm accustomed to. The air, what's better than breathing? I specifically asked, and I said this to multiple people, where's the reprieve? Like, Jesus Christ, where do you go to get away from the smog? I'm about to die. They got all this poison in the air. Redondo Beach is what this person said. So I had that filed away like, okay, I don't know if that's true or not, but he says Redondo. And I said that because, I don't know if that's true, because I was on Malibu Beach and the smog was still there. I said, man, it's there. You can't even go out and just enjoy being at the beach because the toxic air is omnipresent in LA County. Malibu is not even Los Angeles, but the smog is still there. Certainly would be there now. It continues. So like I said, this person recommended Redondo Beach for getting away from the air and such. And then they had their coordinates about the farmer's market, which I was not looking for in San Francisco or LA. Whatever, no correspondence for weeks. The fire happens this week. I remember our conversation. I said, oh my goodness, I can even read you the email that I sent. I said, most importantly, I hope you and your attempted family and friends are safe, have properties that are safe, and have access to high quality air filters. That would be my prayer for all of the non-white people in the SoCal area. The rest is substantially less important. Watching the most recent reports of California, or I abbreviated it to capital C-A-L-I, California, wildfires that have lit up all of the places I visited in Los Angeles, I have remembered our correspondence often. Redondo Beach got air quality warnings just like the whole rest of LA County, which is what I experienced while there and what I would expect, with no sign of improvement. Facts. As Fuller say, what's better than breathing? You cannot imagine how much worse my Los Angeles grousing would have been if anything like this happened while I was there. I thought I was going to die, be killed while there anyway. Facts. Hope you all are safe and far removed from the flames and bad air. Now I'm just going to read what I was given. I'm near Inglewood, non-evacuation area. And because I haven't been watching TV, friends and relatives from the East and Seattle tipped me off to the approaching fires. Simply take my word as someone born here that Redondo Beach air, all capital letters, was a world improved from any fire zones, in all capital letters. Now I just want to read that again, whole sentence. Simply take my word as someone born here that Redondo Beach air, all capital letters from this point forward, was a world improved from any fire zones. Now, I'm sure this person was probably typing on their phone and they have the auto complete, or they could have been on the computer too, because they have autocomplete and spell check and that sort of thing. So it probably just switched it. He meant to say impacted, and it just switched it to improved. But man, that's one where it's in all capitals and grammatically incorrect. Two, it is factually incorrect per KTLA and the New York Times. Now, you can take it from someone who has admitted they have not been watching television. I'm going to take that they have not been keeping up with news and information about what's happening in their area. They had to learn from someone in Seattle, and they just had wildfires in this area last month. Not to mention they burned that bus down, but whatever. You can take his, VGQ. You can take his assessment, born in this area, native, or KTLA News. I think they have meteorologists who work at KTLA News and the New York Times, who both, they showed a map of LA County, and they said in no uncertain terms, Redondo Beach area, air quality warning. In fact, it looked like the entire LA County area was lit up. In fact, as I looked at the map, they even had some cautions about San Diego for the air quality, which again, none of this surprised me. They were showing satellite photos where you could see the smoldering ashes and smoke. You do have a thing called wind, yes. I told you they had those wildfires in Canada and it drifted down here. Soot in our windowsill. Victims guaranteed qualified. You said what you said. I had already seen the newspaper about this, so no, I do not think Redondo Beach would be a reprieve from the air quality, but whatever. If LA is just not your place, I will take your recommendation on where I should visit. I did not have any sort of recommendation about where anybody should visit for any of you all. I simply gave my view on my trip. You all do what you do, visit where you visit. My recommendation would be go someplace where you will not have to run for your life because they're going to riot because the local team won a championship or because they're going to have uncontrollable wildfires. That would be my recommendation, if any, but hey, do what you do. I may have lived under derivations here that I have become accustomed to. I don't really know what that means. If you just, have been accustomed, but derivations, I don't know that. Anyway, so he wrote back. He wrote back asking a question. Then he wrote back again 6 hours later. Now, this one really got my goat after everything that he has written. So he says, above is imagery I received yesterday from a friend. He sent a video. That's what he's talking about. From a friend whose house stands miraculously on a burned out block. The house is in Pasadena, blocks from Altadena, that's epicenter, the big fire, 40 miles from Redondo Beach. To add levity to my friend's scare and to celebrate his outcome, I told them about your comments on low-quality Redondo Beach air and a few months ago being unable to find even adequate farmers markets. Now, the important word, I wasn't looking for farmers markets. I just said I didn't come across any while I was there. The 8 days that I was there, I wasn't seeking farmers markets in San Francisco either, but I stumbled across 2 having been there 4 days in a substantially smaller city. We both laughed. He is a lifelong native too and a Berkeley grad, so we appreciate UCLA's library system as you do. Berkeley's library system is pretty Apart from the above, I have some feedback, and you didn't answer my question as to why you felt fear of harm in L.A. They burned the bus down? Moreover, we haven't met, so I don't know you and how you come across as a person. Your usage of attempted and lowercase language for activities and titles in referencing other people and even yourself is a clue as to why you have had a bad experience in L.A. Fake in all capital letters is one of the worst general terms of reference here to direct at another person. I'm so confused about all of this. And again, like the assumptions, like, who are you again? And I don't remember saying anything about the fake. I said air quality. Air quality. Now, apparently you all have no problem with the air quality down there. Cool and the gang. That was not my LA experience for any place that I visited. Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Malibu, LA, thumbs down, air quality. And there were no wildfires at the time. This was before they even got to burning the buses and such. I was saying, man, the air is just not, and I mean, it was visible. Like I said, you couldn't even see the Hollywood sign and such. That is not, that's what I said too. Like, that's a nut, man. If you come and visit Tacoma, Gus T is not going to be running off at the mouth about your experience. Real talk, if you come and visit Seattle and you want to do a blog or travel video, what have you, about your experience, I'm probably not going to have a whole lot to say about that either. But you live in Inglewood and are talking about Redondo Beach. I'm in L.A. As you said, there's quite a distance, yes? What in the world? Like, and we've never had conversation. Like, I just don't even understand. My head hurts, and the fact, man, this dude's house could have burned down. Like, did he have to evacuate? Like, the lack of seriousness. And that was the other thing that got me too. This is the second time there's been some sort of major disaster, like a wildfire, hurricane, where it was black people telling me, man, I was not paying attention to that at all. We didn't know nothing about that. And I mean an event where like people died, major loss of property, that sort of thing. And I won't pay attention to nothing to that. I had to have folks on the other side of the world tell me about that. I just said, like, man, there have got to be some ideas, behavior patterns that we are repeating, holding on to, that are retarding our ability to solve this problem. Us not being serious. Because I say it like this. I bet if it had been a Dodgers game, you would have known what was happening then. Facts. You live in a place, if you live in a place where they got raging wildfires, raging hurricanes on a regular basis, I'm going to submit that is the cost of doing business. You chose to live there. You think it's great there. That's the cost of doing business. You're going to have to keep up with the weather. Are we going to have to flee to save our lives today? Oh, okay, we can chill and watch the baseball game. Cool, no problem. Same thing I would say if you live in Florida or something like that, retired firefighter. You're going to have to keep up with the weather report. In the summertime, I don't think you can be down here and just be, chilling and, man, Dolphins, they about to get spring training on them. I don't pay attention to no weather. No. Dare I say, this sort of not keeping up with things that are serious, this is why we don't know nothing about Jonestown. Even those of us who live in California, even those of us who lived through it, this is why we don't know nothing about Jonestown. Not taking things serious, and I can't say enough, reaching out to black people for conflict. I didn't say nothing about no fake people in Los Angeles. Like, real talk, I was so baffled. Like, what are you talking about? I said repeatedly, I'm George Floyd down here. That's what I said. Number one problem, I don't like being in places that are unsafe. I can't even breathe down here. What does that have to do with fake? What does that have to do with attempted? That just lets me further know you're not really a C.O.W.S listener. You don't really have anything to do with counter-racism. You're about Dodger baseball and all the rest of it. Incidentally, I do know how to use grammar. I had to go back and look at my spelling, although I don't know what that has to do either with my LA experience, but I did capitalize all of the proper nouns. My sentences started with capital letters every time, and I did not use all caps for any words in my correspondence. Now, that might have confused him a bit because this person uses a lot of all caps in their writing. I don't do that. Again, I don't know what that would do with... Anyway, my LA experience, toxic, and a dangerous environment. I even said that white people can do a lot to confound our values. What would be the value that you would have to tell me that in a system of white supremacy racism, especially if what they said on Democracy Now! Is this going to be the new normal? You live in an area that is vulnerable to these type of wildfires all the time. Wow. I would have to factor that in. Do I want to live here? That white man said, I left there 2 years ago. Like, deuces, I can already see where this is going. I can't. When we flew into Los Angeles, I had never flown into LA. I'd been to LA before, repeatedly. I had never flown in. That Fuller said that sometimes you need that 10,000-foot view. Man, when we flew in and I looked down, I said, oh my God, we are flying into the desert? LA is a desert? I didn't conceptualize LA as a desert. I got it now. Desert. That's what happens in the desert. Our value system is appalling. And sports and entertainment at the city. Man, if my friend's house almost burned down, I am not going to be giggling about no clown Gus T that I don't even know. Like, is your family safe? Are you safe? Do you have air filters? Do you have a mask? That's what I'm going to be talking about. Are you evacuating? I don't even think all this is over with yet. I should have just played that and Dr. Kanban. We are not serious about things that are serious. We are silly about things that are serious. Extra super silly. I'm still trying to get an answer to my question. What is better than breathing? Any of you all out there got an answer on that one? What is better than breathing? You say the air quality is fine. White people put out a map with your town on it saying, warning, danger, breathing might be an issue. We are silly about things that are serious, serious about things that are silly. Shout to Jackie Robinson. I was looking at Dodger Jackie Robinson paraphernalia while I was there. I didn't even get that. Serious about things that are silly. Anyway, the number is 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Even I started going back and just listening to old Ice Cube's song. Plus nobody I know got killed in South Central LA. Like, that's a good, I even was listening to the lyrics for the whole song because he said no smog, mama cooked a breakfast with no hog, no bacon. He was in Nation of Islam at the time, or Muslim, may still be, I don't know. But just going through all the things that he talks about in the song, like we live such niggardly existences. Like his whole great day in L.A., the police didn't beat him to death. He didn't have to kill another black person. They played a ball game with black people, played a card game with black people, sexual activity with a black female, and then he watched a ball game on, see all that sports and activity, got to go play basketball. Then why the Lakers beat the Supersonics? You might say now Gus T just got an attitude because Seattle lost. Then that might be true to a degree. But still, that is a good day, and then nobody got killed in South Central LA, we hope. That is a good day. Not we opened the business, not even what I said on the slide. I said, man, I get the impression a lot of black people go to LA and do not go to the beach. His good day, they did not go to they didn't go to Redondo Beach. They didn't go to Santa Monica Pier. They didn't go to Malibu on a good day. Niggardly existence, niggardly thinking, not serious about things that are like saving your life. And if I'm 1,000 miles from Los Angeles. My air filter is on now. Technically, I put the on in quotes. I have a green dot on my filter. Air is clean, so it's not really on. But it would click on if the debris came in and such. I will hope the same for you all if you're in, particularly for our SoCal listeners and or non-white people in the SoCal area in general. Folks who dialed in, commentary to share, let us know that, if anything, if you're in SoCal, like you should be an expert on air filters. Let the rest of us know these are the best air filters to use if there's any sort of fire, storm, event, you have asthma, bang, this is what I use. I live in LA. We have wildfires every other day. This is what to have. That's what I would expect from an LA resident. Let's see. Octavius in New York, also thousands of miles away from the wildfires. Do you have commentary to share, sir?
Greetings, Gus, and greetings, calls and listeners. My significant other actually, she used to live in LA. She moved out here 8 years ago. So it's been very, it's devastating for her. So I've been kind of consoling her through this. The family is safe. Friends are safe. Nobody's injured. She did speak about a town that was a black town predominantly. That is, she stated that on the reports that she was getting, that there were very little fire trucks or anything of that sort coming in that black town's direction. And this black town, as she said, was below Pasadena. Because everything that was happening, obviously all these fire trucks and all the rescue went straight to the quote-unquote wealthy people, the Hollywood stars' homes. So it's a town, I have to look it back up. I apologize, I don't have it handy. It was in my notes, but I must have deleted it by accident. But it's something that really is difficult right now. But the other aspect is that we do have conversations about California and moving back to LA in general, and I'm not trying to be facetious or mean or anything. It's just there's so many issues that concern me about moving there, and I think California as a whole is a beautiful state. Please, understand that, but the fires, the earthquakes, the water shortages, if you look at the Southern Poverty Law Center, they have I think they're second as far as the most racist white supremacist groups. They're second in the largest prison industrial complexes in the country. The homeless problem. I mean, we have a homeless problem here in New York as well, but it's just the water problem is one of the biggest things, along with the earthquake in the air, that really concern me about moving to a place like that, because when supplies run short, what do you do? Are you going to jump on the highway? The highways are always a mess. It's a really tough scenario, and I've been there. I enjoyed it. I had a great time. There's definitely so much that the state has to offer, but it's an ongoing conversation about California, to say the least. Rolling, flipping back to some of the segments, the other segment that was about California from that actual, I think he was a scientist, the environmental scientist, was really interesting because one of the things he kept on mentioning was, and he didn't go into too much detail about this, is the fact that he said, "Oh, I wish the New York Times would have let me put this in." And it made me go, "Wait a minute." I mean, and I'm going to listen to it again, that segment, because I think I heard some of it in Democracy Now! But it's like, wait a minute, exactly how much of that work that you put in your, his article, did they cut out? Like you're saying, they cut out one part with Obama, they cut out another part about, the dangers of California living there. Like, wait a minute, like. So I was really caught off guard by that, and I wonder how much that actually happens when they actually take articles from journalists and edit them. And it's a really important thing to think about while you're actually reading and doing some really critical reading and understanding that dynamic. The other segment about the homes, just about being displaced, again, rolls right back to California to some degree, but also about the AI already in so many ways is being utilized against us. And I see that the technology, as it progresses, it's never used to actually enhance the life of most of us, quote unquote, non-white people, and even people that are white. It's usually used to enhance the white people that are like at the top. And the white people, there's some they'll call them sacrificial white people that get the they get the tail end of it as well, but they still do better than us as non-white people. So I find that a constant thing and something to really recognize. Another thing was I went to an event on Tuesday for a book signing. This book was about Black excellence. It's by an author named Deandra Rose. It was about HBCUs and the strive for Black excellence and bettering democracy. I kind of, some of it I'm kind of, I hear people when they talk about HBCUs, I think they definitely have their importance and they're definitely useful. I just, however, think that a lot of times in conversations that I have with people about education, it seems to always circle around becoming a doctor, a lawyer, or some kind of engineer, as opposed to just, and I'm not saying just, as opposed to working as a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter, or anybody, or a mechanic, a car mechanic, like these fields and architecture, like, especially fields like architecture, where there's not that many of us anymore. And in New York City, this is something that is extremely important to mention, which is they removed a lot of the craft schools out of New York City, especially out of Brooklyn, where they had schools named automotive, and it was an automotive school. It's no longer an automotive school, but they still have the title. And they removed all these resources, and what entered in? The drug era, crack, cocaine, and instead. So it's something like, again, the book I think is important. HBCUs are important, but I think it's also important to mention these trade schools that are necessary. But I did purchase the book. I have it on my shelf because I do want to read about some of the history of HBCUs and how they were formed. And the other gentleman there was, he's a lawyer, and he spoke about the book that I think you mentioned before, All God's Children by Fox Butterworth. And I didn't realize I had that book on my shelf about the age of people that are of children he basically changed the age in New York City so that children at a younger age can be tried as adults. It's a difficult story, but I definitely have to read some more of the book. I just read the intro to check it out. But he mentioned that book as one of the things that he was tackling, and they actually had the chance to change that policy. That just about sums everything up for me. Thank you again, and I'll mute my line.
Much obliged, Octavius. Lots, I would agree. It's a whole lot of considerations for California. Facts. Reading more important than watching television. Nonfiction. In fact, a listener had reminded me, Gus T's suggestion, all of the victims of white supremacy, non-white people, new calendar year, that means new non-fiction book published the current calendar year. That's what I've said our task should be. Now, he just mentioned some books. They were published from last year. Certainly nothing wrong going back and getting things that you might have missed that were published before, but absolutely. In fact, I had a big smile because my trip to California was so fruitful. How fruitful was it? I was registered to hear Deandra Rose discuss the power of black excellence, HBCUs, and the fight for American democracy. They had her do a lecture at the University of California, Berkeley, on November 19 of last year. It was an hour and a half Zoom conference that they had set up, and I registered for it. I was going to go attend, but I was down in Stanford that day. Now, I could have been gangster and been watching the Zoom while I was in Stanford doing my research and stuff there, but there's just so much going on. I didn't do the Zoom, but I could, I guess, go back and just watch the replay of the Zoom if they recorded it. But I saw the details. I thought it looked interesting while I was there. White people are not ignorant about white supremacy racism because they don't have a whole lot of black people at Cal Berkeley either. Would have been interesting to just see who was in attendance, or it was on Zoom. Never fitted. If they had it in person, I probably would have been more likely to attend. But yes, the power of excellence, Deandra Rose and All God's Children. We mentioned that book a number of times on the Cows before. South Carolina history, New York too. But we mentioned that book a number of times. We were going to read that after we read Ben Tillman and the Reconstruction of White Supremacy. And then it got mentioned again when we read Gavin DeBecker's The Gift of Fear, because he talks about that change in age limits, like these Negro boys, they're white privileged Negro boys running wild. We got to do something about them, prosecute them as adults, and, stick them in a cage someplace. He has a whole chapter talking about that. We were going to read it right there too. Had the book and everything, was trying to get a narrator because I don't think an audio book exists of All God's Children. But wow, it said the author, let's see, go ask him some questions and all that good stuff. Reading more important than watching television. And then, especially in the time you get to ask a white person questions about their book, always take advantage of that as well, especially if they wrote something about racism, white supremacy. Take advantage. Let's see. Folks who have commentary and such, do not wait till the last minute. Number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Importantly, give folks about 5 minutes if they have additional thoughts to share. When they spoke about the truck explosion in Las Vegas, Leibelsberger, or however you say his name, white man, racist suspect, they presented that not as an act of terrorism, but as a mental health crisis that needs intervention to, make sure that these soldiers are cared for. Warriors, that's what they called them, a warrior. I said, well, I thought the black fella in New Orleans, I thought he was in the military too. Like, wouldn't it be the same thing? Like, maybe he had a mental health crisis. Maybe he needed some sort of intervention as opposed to ISIS-inspired terrorist. Why is it such, a stark difference? Like, yes, I know we had fatalities in Louisiana, never won a loss of life like that. You didn't have fatalities other than, the perpetrator himself in Las Vegas, but still, I mean, you had injuries and such. Why isn't that, act of terrorism? Or call them both mental health crises of our soldier. Christopher Dorner could be put in there too, in fact. Micah Xavier Johnson too, in fact. Okay. That segment as well about the so-called Dutch involvement in Nazi Germany, World War II. We talked about some of that when we read Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment, because we talked about the super babies, the Levensborn, that's how you say it correctly. But I think they were involved in that project as well in making these, super baby soldiers that are supposed to be the next generations of Aryan, racist man, racist woman to carry out, all of this Hitler's destiny and such, white supremacy. Let's see. Make sure I didn't miss the January. Enrique Tarrio, that was the one I wanted to make sure. Enrique Tarrio wasn't even there on January 6th, but he got easily, I think, the heftiest sentence of all of the folks thus far. I think he got almost like a 30-year sentence. He's one of the few non-white people. He wasn't even present. If there's going to be some pardons handed out, Enrique Tarrio should be pardoned day one. Like, I don't care what they said, unless they say he planted the pipe bombs, and I haven't heard anyone say that. If he didn't plant the pipe bombs, he should get a pardon day one. You served your time, sir. Let's roll. Then you can get to Rachel Powell and all these other old lame white people and enforcement officers and the rest of these folks who did whatever. But day one, pardon one. Enrique, 30 years, he wasn't even there. You just put Enrique Tarrio, pardon, day one. First 10 minutes he said, then we, like I said, you get to all these other old lame white people and If I was white and one of those enforcement officials and I went through all that, they didn't pepper spray. We read Mr. Dunn's book. They didn't spray WD-40. And even you heard in the Sicknick family, they said he had pepper spray had saturated his uniform and reefer. Now, wait a minute. I was at the Erykah Badu concert in San Francisco. Now, you're not going to tell me that you got a serious grievance. You are here to maintain democracy, stop an unlawful usurpation of office. Like, oh, no, we are here on Syria. Wait a minute. Are you serious? And that's what we read. That's what Mr. Dunn said. He's sitting in there smoking reefer. It's not like we heard something new or what. They were smoking. That's what he said with the pistachios. Remember? Come on, man. And it's so bad. I'm here in an enforcement capacity, and I smell like I've been kicking it with Snoop for a month. Come on. What does it mean to be white? Ought to be shamed. No shame. Ought to be shamed. Why is that part? Like, imagine if black people, these have been, all these folks are Black Lives Matter. And they got, ounces of reefer, and they got all their CBD and everything, and their pistachios, and they go in and they're going to get rowdy and put pepper spray all on white officers and all the rest of it. And then Obama going to come in and, well, no, they were puffing the reefer and the wacky tobacco, but, they had a legitimate beef. They had my back, so I'm gonna go ahead and let them go. Come on. I can't even. Anyway, I guess the inauguration is a few days. We can count down and we'll see, because he had been saying that was going to be day one activity. So we'll get to see, are these hoodlums released, and then they'll be super duper 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 emboldened. Any hoodles, we'll be here on Thursday for the Catherine Massey Book Club, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. It has been a fascinating read thus far, quite a commentary on black parenting, as well as just the time. But we got Dr. King's holiday coming up. Like, that is, kind of wild in and of itself. Dr. King's holiday is coming up, and he's kind of an integral part of the book. Dr. Maya Angelou working for the SCLC and Dr. King and trying to help them get funding and all the rest of it. So it is, kind of, correct, just, I'll say, to be reading this text at this moment. If folks didn't know this much about Dr. Angelou's life at this period and her protesting the assassination of Patrice Lumumba and what she was doing in New York early 1960s and her counter-racist activities in the New York City area in the 1960s. Check out the book club. We haven't even got that far into it. We've only done 3 sessions. We're at like chapter 7. So, and it's like not all white people is racist. In addition to her commentary on black masculinity, that also has been fascinating. More to come on that. We haven't even got to the part about Patrice Lumumba yet, so we haven't even got to the good parts. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Check the schedule. I'll have updates for broadcasts for the coming week and such, beyond the book club, neutralizing workplace racism, all of that. Let's see, make sure did not miss anyone. Didn't miss anybody out there with commentary, questions to add. Exciting folks are satisfied. Again, for the folks in the California area, man, safety, air quality, even if you're in an area that you didn't have to evacuate and they haven't had a fire per se, the white people have said, just because you can't see any smoke or debris in the air per se, that doesn't necessarily mean that the air is A+ and you're good to be outside, especially if you have any sort of respiratory issues. Take it seriously. Hopefully you are safe. Your property is safe if you had to, evacuate, if you're able to get out safely. Even I saw some folks, that seemed like it was difficult. That's what I mean. Like, if you're going to live in one of those areas or areas where they have hurricanes, we talked about this before, man, you got to take that super serious. Supplies, water, you might need that to-go bag, like, serious. And I mean, it might have to be repacked on a monthly basis. Like I said, some areas of California, they had wildfires last month. That's the price of doing business. You chose to live there. Hey. But take it serious. And for sure, if you have offspring and or other people, even if they're not, so-called children, if they are dependent on you for their care and needs and what have you, oh man, we're going to have to maybe do some practice runs and all of that. If something happens and we have, 5 hours to get out of here, bam, we've already practiced. This is what's important. These are the materials that we have to take, important documents, medication, whatever it is. Boom, and we're out of here. This is where we're going. Boom. Already got the backup routes and everything else. Maybe you have maps printed out in case of the issue with the phone, because I think they might have had some electric services go down, because I think they had some phones or power services go out briefly during all this. You'd have to kind of be prepared for that too. Phones might go out or what have you. Boom, we have the old school maps and other things, so we know these are routes to take. Bang, if they get choked out, boom, other routes to take. No problem. Got that figured out too. All of that thought about in advance. And even the looting, that's something, if you are a non-white person, because they're talking about looting in the LA area right now, and they've been talking about that for a couple days now, that is also, now they might not be fires or what have you in your area. Once they start talking about niggers looting, oh man, white people and guns, that presents a whole different safety hazard that will have to be thought about. Is it going to be safe for us to get outside? That happened in Louisiana. You had people who stayed. They didn't have a problem with flood water. They had a problem with race soldiers. They could walk outside, no danger of drowning, but might get shot and killed. Race soldiers. That's something else to think about once they start. Looters. That's why I put that photo up today, man. I told you I'm going to figure out ways of using that AI constructively. Renthal James with a gas can, he would be a looting, raping Negro. Shout to Brentwood. I didn't get there, but I had it in mind. We will assume folks are satisfied. If you, again, non-white in the California area, satisfied and safe. Minimum here for the book club on Thursday. Check for updates. Sobriety would be best. Again, you never know. You might have to make life-saving decisions immediately. You want to be able to think well under the system of white supremacy, racism, and all that liquor is carcinogenic. We talked about that. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. No name calling black people, especially Dr. King's holiday approaching. No gossiping. No throwaway offspring. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. Safety to all the victims of white supremacy in California.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.